afternoon. I'd like to call this Tampa City Council meeting to order. If we could have roll call at this time.
Carlson. Here. Hurtat. Here. Clendenin.
Here.
Henderson, Vieira, Miranda.
Here.
And Maniscalco.
Here.
We have a physical quorum.
Thank you very much. May I have a motion to open the 1:30 public hearings? Motion from Councilmember Miranda. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilmember Clendenin. All in favor? Aye. All right, the hearings are open. There was a request that came through about item 64 to continue it to a later date. I believe the petitioner is here. It's quasi-judicial. Do I have to swear him in for a continuance? No? All right. Yes, sir. Please state your name.
Good afternoon. William Malloy, 325 South Boulevard, Tampa, Florida. Councilman, we request a continuance for this case. It's a very technical matter. My engineer had a flooding emergency yesterday, and he is really the one that needs to speak to this item. Ask for your indulgence on that. If we can make the next.
When do you want to continue it to?
Pardon me?
When do you want to continue it to?
Next available hearing, sir.
Let's find out. October 3rd?
That's fine. Absolutely.
All right.
Motion to continue to October 3rd.
We have a motion to continue this item to October 3rd from Councilman Clendenin, second from Councilman Miranda. Mr. Shelby?
Date, time, and place.
It'll be for 1:30 p.m., 315 East Kennedy Boulevard, 3rd floor, Tampa, Florida, 33602.
Very good. Thank you.
All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you very much. All right, item number 63 is our next hearing item. If you are going to speak on item number 63, please stand, raise your right hand, and we'll swear you in. Is there anybody registered online? Yes?
Motion to receive and file all ex parte communications that have been available for public inspection.
Do we have a motion? We have a motion from Councilmember Clendenin, second Councilman Miranda. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. We will begin with item 63.
Good afternoon. Kamaria Pettis-Malcolm from the Legal Department. Item number 63 is a review hearing for the matter of SUB 24-12 for the property located at 2115 North Del Mabry Highway. The petitioner is asking and appealing a decision by staff who determined that their request was a substantial change to a rezoning application. Code section 27-138 allows for an applicant who has an approved site plan to ask for changes, administrative process to ask for changes to an approved site plan as long as they're non-substantial. And 27-138 provides that process, and I've provided you a copy of that code section. So just to go back, the petitioner is requesting to reduce the setbacks on the west side of the property as originally approved in REZ 16-66 from to 8 feet when the code requires a minimum of 10 feet. So staff determined that the request was a substantial change according to code section 27-138 subsection 7. I've also provided you a copy of that code section as well. Staff made that decision on May 31st of 2024. In the packet that I provided you, along with the code sections that I previously mentioned, I provided you a copy of the rules of procedure, sample motions, and also code section 27-61, subsection J3, which governs the process for review hearings. As stated or provided in code section 27-61, subsection J3, this is a de novo review hearing, which means City Council can accept new information and take testimony regarding this matter. Ms. Dock is here to provide an overview of the application and the decision from staff. Once you hear from all the parties and hear all the evidence regarding this matter, City Council can affirm the decision of staff who determined that the request was a substantial change, or City Council can overturn the decision of staff and determine that the request from the petitioner is non-substantial. So those are the two action items City Council can take. And I'll be available if you have any questions, but now I'll turn it over to Ms. Dock.
Yes, thank you very much. Any questions? No? Yes, Ms. Dock.
Thank you so much, Council. LaChone, Dock Development Coordination, and I have a presentation,
Okay.
if we could bring that up.
There it is.
Okay, and so this request, as has been reviewed with you, is a substantial change appeal hearing. This is for sub 24-12. So the applicant is Jim Porter. The property is located at 2115 North Del Mabry Highway. So the request is reviewed under section 27-138 of the zoning code. The request, as mentioned to you and has been briefed, is the request is to reduce the front yard setback from 10 feet minimum to 8 feet, and I'll show you momentarily the pictures of the site and what we're referencing here on the west side of the site. So the location of the site, this is an aerial, so just for orientation, the site is located west of Himes Avenue. It is on Del Mabry, so it is bordered with Cherry Street to the north, and Walnut Street is located on the south of the site, and it is at the corner. So the site itself, just to talk about the zoning for a second, the site is approved through a PD rezoning. It was approved in 2016 under file REZ 1666. That approval allows for all CI uses on the site, so all commercial intensive uses are allowed. This council hears PD requests before them all the time. Any PDs which are approved, there is a 5-year time frame for build out. If you build beyond that 5 years, you submit a substantial change review. You submit that site plan, it is reviewed, and then that site plan should mimic what you submit for your building permit. So in 23, a substantial change request was submitted. It showed the use of the drive-in window in a restaurant on site, and also just general compliance with the West Shore Overlay District standards. And since that time, what happened is the applicant went to permitting, and on the second round of permitting reviews is when it was discovered that the setback was not at the 10 feet, it was at 8 feet on that west side. So I'll show you that image shortly. So what we're looking at here is the site. The top photo is the site itself. This is the front of the site. So this is the west view if you are on Del Mabry and looking at the site, looking east. The bottom left picture is another view of the site, the front of it, but this is if you're standing on the north end of it, looking south. The bottom picture on the right is the east end of the site, and this is where patrons would enter the site, the subject site for the drive-through service. So I wanted to show you also the site, what else is on the site. So if you are heading north on Del Mabry and you turn right into the site, what you see before you is the hotel, the picture on the top. So the hotel is developed. If you look to your left, that is the site, which is the bottom picture. And that's the view if you're looking north at the subject site. So there's an arrow that's there. I know some of the wording is kind of over that arrow, but it kind of points to that column. On the left side of that column, that is the front setback, and that is where it is off by 2 feet. So in the rezoning and the approved PD, it calls out, and by it being located in the West Shore Overlay, it requires that minimum 10-foot setback, and staff cannot administratively approve that difference in the setback. So as mentioned earlier, it is in the West Shore Overlay District. Del Mabry is a regional corridor, and those are the standards on that regional corridor, that minimum 10-foot setback. So staff took into consideration not only that the site allows for commercial intensive uses and that the hotel is already built on the site along with the restaurant, but we also look at any possible impacts, and we didn't find any from that construction. And we did not receive any objections from the request. Staff is in support of the request. What we did look at is, in addition to that, the site allowing commercial intensive uses, we look whenever there's a request for relief from the code of potential impacts, and there were no potential impacts from allowing that setback at the 8 feet. And then we looked at the frontage of the site. The wall meets transparency and embellishment requirements for the West Shore Overlay. And so with that, that concludes my presentation.
Yes, Councilmember Hurtak.
Can you go back one
I'm
slide?
available? Yes, absolutely.
So basically the issue here is that that staff cannot override the West Shore Overlay.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
The setback.
But staff is in support of overturning the denial.
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Yes.
Meaning not in support of overturning the denial, but supporting the idea of modifying the setback, which,
To the 8 feet, which is
Yes.
kind of this, yes,
so you're looking at that as the same thing.
yes.
So basically, if this was incorrect, trying to figure this out. Ideally, this should, if this if this is not something that the West Shore overlay that you can approve, it would have to come back to us, but instead of doing two things, we're looking at doing one thing. So it doesn't have to come
Well-
back to us twice.
Since it is a requirement of the West Shore overlay to have that setback, and they are not at that setback, one of the things that staff cannot administratively approve is that reduction in setback. So the only way it can be approved is through city council, and then that's through
Thank
this appeal process.
Councilmember Clendenin.
I have a, so I have a question. So
Yes.
this was approved as a PD in 2016? And
Yes.
so it wasn't touched in the 5-year period?
Correct.
So that PD, if, what I'm hearing you say is basically staff, once a PD is approved, even though that 5 years expired, staff can reapprove just by staff approval? It doesn't have to come back to council?
Well, what happens is after the 5-year build-out, after the 5-year period, the applicant has to show that they are meeting code requirements. So they're required by code to submit for substantial change review. Staff reviews it consistent with the PD plan. So they can't do anything that's not approved in the PD plan.
Gotcha. But the PD lives forever, even
The
though it hasn't
PD
been
lives
built.
forever, that use
Even though it
remains
wasn't
until someone comes back and rezones it again.
Okay.
Correct.
So the setback in this corridor, are there other examples of encroachment so that that we are aware of that are, currently existing conditions? So would just be one of many, or would this be the first encroachment in that corridor?
I did not look along that corridor. I can check and see I just don't have the numbers to say that there are so many within this distance that have encroached.
Yeah, I just,
within
because
that
it is a major
setback.
transportation corridor, and who knows what the future will bring, I just wonder about, what that looks like, so. I mean, are we approving something that one day we're gonna have to go back and buy? It's like, that's what I wonder about.
One of the things we looked at and considered and reviewed was the fact that there's commercial that's to the north, commercial to the south, and then you've got Del Mabry, that strip of Del Mabry with that right of way. So we just didn't feel that there were major impacts at all.
Yeah, I just felt like, I mean, if I knew that there were other examples of encroachments, that it was just, I guess I wouldn't, but if it was the first one, then I may be a little bit more wary of approving. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Anything else? Does that conclude your
That
presentation?
does, that concludes. I'm
All right.
available for questions. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Any other questions? If not, does that conclude the entire presentation by staff? Staff, yes. Yes, okay. Now I'll go to the applicant, or petitioner will have 15 minutes to present. We'll have questions, and then we go to public comment. Yes, sir. Please state your name.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and City Council. My name is John Dix. I'm a practice law with Jim Porter, so I'm here on his behalf. I also have with me Chris Kern and David Pinella, both of whom work with or for Green Lane, which is the restaurant in question here. I don't want to rehash anything the City Council said, and I'm cognizant of respectful of everybody's time. I do want to make just a couple of points, very quick points. First of all, Green Lane, if you're not familiar with it, is a new concept. It is a fresh salad and wrap drive-through restaurant. And this particular site, you've heard it's on Dale Mabry. It's just south of the stadium. So it's on the way to the stadium. It'll be on your right. And it's an exciting new concept. This is the third location in Tampa Bay. They're working on a fourth. 2 locations in Tampa, the other one's on Gandy. But they're excited about what they're bringing. And one of the things that they're doing, because it's a drive-through, is they are, they're serving salad by drive-through. And so this is what you've heard about, is the wall in question and the setback issue here is created not by, and I think this is important, not by the building itself, which is 37 feet from the road, but by this little wall that protects the drive-through and screens the drive-through. And that screening is consistent with the PD itself. So when Green Lane was trying to develop this restaurant, and I think this is the major theme of our presentation, the 8 feet versus 2 feet was an honest mistake. We did everything else that was required in the code and everything else required by the PD. Drafted the plans with an 8-foot setback. The plans were approved with an 8-foot setback. Nobody caught this until, as you heard from city staff, I think it was the second reading, or the second review. It was an honest mistake, and it's a 2 feet deal that we're talking about, which is really just the width of this column here. We can't move the wall 2 feet in, because if you were to move the wall 2 feet in, you would mess with the traffic flow, and it would be unsafe for vehicles to make this turn in the drive-through. So we can't move the wall to 2 feet in. Certainly if we had caught this from the very beginning, we could have moved everything 2 feet, but we can't move the wall and leave the building where it is. So we're just, it's a mea culpa hearing. We're sorry. We wish that we had caught this on the front end and we could do something about it, but as it stands now, all we have is to ask for forgiveness. It is consistent with the development restrictions. It's consistent with the code. It's an attractive building. It's an exciting concept, and we ask for your indulgence on this 2 feet issue.
Councilmember Hurtak.
Can you put the photo back up? Is this already built?
Yes.
Okay.
It's already built. They've had
Okay.
a temporary CO, and
Okay.
they opened, and they had Rob Gronkowski out there serving in the drive-through line, and
Okay,
everybody's yes.
that was the part that I was unclear about, so thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Anything else?
Thanks, sir.
All right. At this time, we'll go to public comment. If anybody wishes to speak from the public, please come up and state your name. Yes, ma'am, please state your name.
Stephanie Pointer, this is the perfect example of why city council does need to hear land use issues, no matter what that goofy judge said. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any additional staff? Is there anybody else? Any additional staff comment? No? Would you like rebuttal, sir? You have 5 minutes.
Ditto.
Ditto. Second. We have a motion to close from Councilmember Clendenin, second from Councilmember Vieira. All in favor? Aye. All right, the hearing is closed. Would anybody like to make a motion at this time?
So I move to overturn the zoning administrator's decision in SUB 2412 for the property located at 2115 North Del Mabry Highway because the petitioner provided competent substantial evidence that the request to reduce the west side yard setback is a non-substantial change in accordance to the standards of the City of Tampa Code 27-138-7 for the following reasons. The impact is de minimis. Actually, I noticed in the photograph that there was already a major billboard. It seems to be in the same setback area, so that, so there's already an obstruction in that setback. This was obviously an oversight from both the applicant and the staff that moved this to this point forward, and that the impact on the development of this property is de minimis.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second, and this is an overturning of the denial, correct?
Yes.
All right. Is there any discussion?
I just wanted to say that generally, I respect an overlay area. However, no one from West Shore is here to say they have a problem with this, so I can support the overturning.
Okay. No, it's just endless bad news, so. We have a motion and we have a second. All in favor? Aye. All right, it has been overturned, so. All right. Thank you very much. At this time, per request of Councilmember Hurtak, she had pulled, yeah. But they didn't say anything. All right. Per request of Councilmember Hurtak, Mr. O'Hara is here. Items 28, 33, 34, and 55 are the first group that have been pulled. Councilmember Hurtak, if you'd like to start off the discussion for these 4 items, and then we'll go to the 40 and 42.
Sure. Whoops. Forgot my own rule to turn on the microphone. So today, the reason I brought these 4 forward, these are 4 resolutions moving money. And they are moving, 3 of them are moving from personnel to operating. And one of them is moving $500,000 from the general fund in the franchise fee, the electric franchise fee, to operating expenses. And the thing that I wanted to talk I wanted council to know that this seems to be the beginning of sort of truing up our budget to some degree.
Yes, ma'am.
However, I had made a motion for November looking at rollover.
Yes.
And moving money now that most of us would expect to be in the rollover category is obviously not going to be in the rollover category that we're going to get in November. So when does this normal transfer of funds from categories where it won't be used into other categories where it will be used, when does that normally begin within a budget cycle?
Yes, ma'am. Dennis Rogero, Chief Financial Officer. It can take a couple, or it can happen in a number of different periods. These particular items are done because these departments have I don't want to say immediate, but imminent need for this funding in their operating account as opposed to their personnel account. Ideally, after we close the books out, November, December, we'll be able to, as we've discussed before, we'll be able to show council and the public and the mayor, here's where we're closing the books and what we're ending up with compared to what we projected. We've been very fortunate in the past. We were fortunate this year where it ended up being more than we anticipated. And I think the discussion going forward is centering around, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't want to speak for you, council having more input into that and at an earlier time. So these would be, I don't want to call them anomalies, but we're taking these actions for a couple of reasons. They have that imminent need for an operating expense. It also, candidly, is better optics using, for instance, the franchise fees than pulling it from fund balance. We have unanticipated, we're making a little more in franchise fees than we thought we would, so let's match that unanticipated revenue to this expense. From a larger perspective, I'm inferring, and you're quite right, that if these operating expense needs did not exist, it would roll to fund balance and would be part of that report, actuals to projection.
Oh.
Does that answer your question?
Yes,
okay.
It does. And that's kind of what I wanted to bring to everyone's attention is that we aren't necessarily, in a rollover report, we aren't going to get what would the full rollover would be. So I wanted folks to just understand that this is kind of what we're looking at now. We're approving these transfers, and that's the whole reason I didn't want the department heads to be here. I'm not focused on the actual transfers, the individual drama behind it. I just wanted to look and make council aware that, yes, these are those changes at the end of the year that we can be impacting. And not that we can't impact any time, but this is that end of year possible rollover balance, and we're just rolling it over before the end of the year.
Very good way to put it. Yes, ma'am.
So what I would like, going forward, I would like to make a motion to then, along with the November 21st report on rollover, I would like to receive a list of these movements from one expense account to another that are actuating this type of movement.
Understood.
So basically from now, from the beginning of September until we get that rollover report, where did these funds that were not necessary in one place move to another that won't be included in the rollover?
Understood. That would in other words, that would mitigate the amount of fund balance.
Correct. And I want both us to understand it and the public to understand it a bit more. And what I realized when I made that motion for November 21st is that I wasn't going to be including these types of changes. Whereas as stewards of the budget, we should be paying a little bit more attention on how this moves around. And I asked each department head when they called me, does this mean we need to do you have enough money in your FY25 budget to cover these things going forward? And all of them assured me they did. But again, just kind of something to bring up and bring forward.
No, I appreciate that, and if I could just add a little bit of context, and thank you for talking to the department directors. We were talking, behind the scenes also, and I think they're quite right. In total, they have enough funding. It's just that we can't move funding from personnel to operating without council action.
Councilmember Moran.
Yeah, and I believe these are what are called after closing. Am I correct that in a big business, you do something like this?
Yes.
When you look at the books and you think that's what's going to happen, but then after you close, you have an after closing where the staff what happened to the money, so we can get the after closing where exactly all the money came from and where it's being spent. And maybe Ms. Hager can work with the council and with yourself so we can get the fidelity that it was done according to what we asked for. That's it.
Yes, sir.
And then just to go based on what we talked about Tuesday night, a budget is really our priorities. And I know that some council members are looking for some money to be used in many different ways. So I thought that just seeing this can help us get a better handle on how things are moved toward the end of the year to keep an eye out for the future.
Understood.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, Mr. Shelby. I did. I made a motion to. Yes, I'm sorry, but yes. So after people speak, I will make a motion to amend that motion.
Okay, Councilmember Carlson, your microphone.
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to add is we need a better mechanism for being flagged of major changes in revenues. If the revenues, if for example there was a pot of $5 million in revenues above projections, if we had a discussion for 2 hours or whatever about $1.5 million the other night, if there was $5 million or 10 or more, we would want to have the community and city council discuss it. Instead, we could, this is an exaggeration, but instead we could get $50,000, $100,000 line item changes, and we would never see that there was $5 million there. And so somehow we need a better way of flagging not just the transactions, but what's the cumulative total of the excess, and we really should know in advance so that we can have a community discussion about it.
Give you the big picture. Okay, understood.
Yeah, I kind of echo what Councilwoman Hurtak and Councilman Carlson just said. I think part of the is, clearly, the relationship between council and administration is always a work in progress, and and turf protection and trust and non-trust issues are coming both, and that door swings both ways, of where people are. And so I think a lot of times when you see things like this, you wonder about transparency issues, and is there hidden agendas and stuff. So I think with reports like that, I think would alleviate that kind of, that curiosity of like, what are they trying to pull? That lingers in the back of your mind sometimes when you see some of these kind of things. So because we're not in the trenches 40 hours a week or 60 hours a week like you guys are. So we tip our toes into it and then pull back out. So it's difficult for us to keep up with it and to understand what you guys are actually doing. Thank you.
And if I could respond, no, I appreciate that. I think I'm pretty clear on the philosophy and the intent, and I just wrote it down. Probably the biggest question right now is what's the best mechanism? So if you'll let us experiment with some and perhaps provide some drafts of the best mechanism, to provide just that.
It's all an experiment.
Councilmember Hurtak, do you want to make a motion?
Yes, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to amend my motion, and I'm sorry I don't have the date of when I made that motion, but it is a motion for November 21st.
Yes.
That would not only bring the rollover, but receive a listing of all of the movement from one line item to another that for these types of purposes, for Ms. Kopesky, can you help me word that? I can see you thinking about it in your head, and if you can, feel free to come up. But basically, I'm looking at moving from one bucket of money to another bucket.
Can I try?
Sure.
Perhaps a list, and I thought you wanted to begin this month, a list of financial transaction that would reduce the anticipated, or I'm sorry, reduce the actual fund balance for fiscal year '24.
That is perfect. Did
Okay.
you get that? Excellent. So
All right.
that is the motion, the amended motion I'd like to make.
Now, I'm sorry. I'm sorry if I could say
Yes.
one thing. There is a chance, and again, going by this year's, or excuse me, fiscal year '23's experience, we did not have the books entirely closed until the end of November.
Yes.
So rather than bring you a request, a potential request for continuance, how would December be acceptable?
Well, I'm going to keep it at November 21st, and if you need to continue
Okay,
it, that
thank
is
you.
absolutely fine with me.
Thank you.
Just let my office know as
Will
soon
do.
as you know.
Thank you.
So that's generally, that way we kind of keep it all together.
Perfect,
So we
thank
have
you.
a motion, do we have a second? Second from Councilmember Carlson, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Does this conclude the discussion for the group of four, or just number one?
No, it's the group of four, but then I have one more because I think Councilmember Carlson brought up a really good point of something we didn't consider. Also in that November 21st meeting, which if you need to move forward, you'll let me know.
Yes,
I would
ma'am.
like to make a motion to also look at our revenue. What, for all of our revenue sources, what went up, what went down?
Okay.
So, and there's only a finite number of revenue sources, so.
So we have a
And
motion.
I'm sorry if I could just ask for a clarification. Do you want it prospective, in other words, what we're anticipating for fiscal year, or what happened in?
What happened in
retrospective?
24?
Copy.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we're going to stick with 24 for all of these motions, and that way they can all travel together. And if they need to be continued, let me know. But that is a really good question. What kind, and from there, we can consider when we get that information on an annual basis.
Yes, ma'am.
So,
We have a motion, do we have a second? Second from Councilmember Carlson, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, at this time.
Thank you,
I'm
Counsel.
gonna go through items one by one. So item number 28 is in your committee?
oh, yeah, no, oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm going to move, yes, I move item 28.
All right, we have a motion. This is item number 28 of what was pulled. Second from Councilmember Vieira, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, any opposed? Councilmember Miranda, you have items 33. We have a motion from Councilmember Miranda, second from Councilmember Vieira, all in favor? Aye. All right, Councilmember Carlson has item number 34. We have a motion from Councilmember Carlson, second from Councilmember Vieira, all in favor? Aye. And then the last item of this bunch is under the Councilmember Henderson. You're the vice chair for item number 55.
I move item number 55.
We have a motion from Councilmember Henderson, second from Councilmember Vieira, all in favor? Aye. All right, the next group is 40 and 42.
Thank you, Counsel.
All right. We're waiting on Councilmember Clendenin to come back for items number 42. That's Councilmember Clendenin. Maybe they're watching. Oh, okay.
Can we go to the next item?
The next item now goes to regular staff report, so let's start it off with, did we do all the way through, we did through 69, right? 70 we approved? Okay, so 70 is done. This is Tampa Fire Rescue and the Real Estate Department to provide a report on the status of the property acquisition by Fleet Maintenance for Fire Station 24. Do we have a memo from Chief Tripp to present a verbal report, but I don't see her here. How about we wait? All right. All right, so next up, we have TPD, Chief Burkall, or a member of the Tampa Police Department, which we have several, for item number 72, regarding a safety and security plan for Ybor City that would comply with the CRA funding rules. All right, I see. All right, very good. TPD is here. Yeah, go ahead.
Just, Mr. Michelini had made a recommendation that, as I understood it, just to be able to use CRA funding for security, we had to go through a security plan, and I think this was just an update on what the status of that is, and if we've met that qualification, so then we could then have a discussion on CRA.
Good afternoon, Council. Deputy Chief Kate, and Major DeFelice here from the Tampa Police Department. I'm going to defer most of this presentation to Major DeFelice. He is the subject matter expert, but the whole department as a whole is working towards safety and security for the whole city, although we are focusing this part just on Ybor.
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Council. We are here to go over the Ybor Safety and Security Plan, and it begins with a discussion of the history of the deployment for that area. So historically, we know that the Ybor Historic District has seen an increase in nightlife, particularly on the weekend, Friday, Saturday. So we have adjusted our deployment accordingly. We have squads that come in early on the weekends to address specifically the incidents and that go on down in Ybor City. The plan provided for an increased police presence, greater monitoring of the entire area as a whole, an MOT for traffic, and including a closing plan to get the patrons out of Ybor City when it was done. The events that took place on October 29th highlighted the need for the security plan to
If we can get the TV camera on Major DeFelice so the public can see him. We have no signal, so. Is it on, can you see yourself on your screen, sir?
No, sir.
Okay. You can see, all right, I think it's. It's coming.
There's a whole bunch of buttons on here. I don't know which one.
All right.
There you go.
There we go. I'm
All right, go
a
ahead,
tech wizard. So our safety and security plan is always under constant review, looking for best practices and what is going to work depending on the environment in Ybor City. After the 29th tragedy that took place, we continue to look for best practices and ways we could enhance the safety and security of that area. In the short term, we inundated the area with officers to kind of restore the calm and the trust that we have there and make sure that security and safety was restored in that area. We also went and conducted a site visit to Orlando, which has a similar downtown area that kind of mirrors ours, and looked to see what their best practices were. And one of the things that come out of that was the majority of the units that they use are off-duty units. So they're not using on-duty resources, and we adopted that model as well. So we updated our safety and security plan. We now use a significant number of off-duty resources that come in to help supplement the already units that are working in that area. It addresses safety via an increase in police presence, proactive patrol, as well as additional operations that go on in the area to deter the crime. That increased presence, when people see that, not just along 7th Avenue, but the surrounding areas, deters people from coming into that district wanting to do bad things. We discussed the need and for partners. So what we did is we looked at our available resources and we partnered with other city entities to include Tampa Fire Rescue. We now have bike medics that are a staple on Friday and Saturday nights. They are able to cut through the traffic and handle medical calls for service much more efficiently than they were before. We also utilize the fire marshal, and that is a key in occupancy for some of the clubs and establishments that may be going over and causing a problem to the overall blight in the area. We also use code enforcement. Code enforcement comes out with us on a weekly basis there with us, and they usually have 2 officers as well as a supervisor that come out. And they are looking for any and all code violations, what keeps the businesses operating properly. One of the biggest things that we've seen were queue lines, and why those are important is because if the sidewalk space is being taken up by an unruly line, then it just makes it difficult for patrons to pass through, since we do keep the roads open as long as we can now. And also the YES team. So the YES team is instrumental down there, and to highlight their importance, a lot of what the concerns that we hear about in Ybor City are quality of life driven. We had a graffiti artist that was down there, and there's a larger underworld to that, and they were tagging a lot of places down in Ybor City, contributing to overall blight. We were able to utilize one of the sergeants, one of the YES team members, the information that they have, and we're able to solve a crime by giving us valuable information that led to the identity of one of those perpetrators. And when I say Why that is a big deal is because he was about 15 of the tagging incidents were attributed to him because they use unique tagging monikers for their names. And we were able to close out 15 cases just attributed to him, and then information from that led to another 8 closures with another person that was arrested for it. So we see that, the utilization of our city entities coming together and working collaboratively has seen and paid dividends down in that district. We also plan on increasing the camera system and technology in the district, which is going to take our number of cameras and essentially triple it. And that's going to provide for greater coverage. And what greater coverage means is that our RTCC can monitor that area and see things before they happen. If something doesn't look right, they're able to let the officers know if it is a place where officers are not currently standing or patrolling. They're able to alert them to it, as well as it lets us get more evidence. So when crimes do occur, we have the ability to play tapes back, get that video surveillance, which leads to higher closure rates for crimes that are committed in the area. So CRA funding, currently the CRA funds about $250,000, and they contribute that to the officers that work at an off-duty capacity that come in when they're not working. And we are always looking for more technology, cameras, and et cetera, noise detection equipment to help bolster what we already have. One of the good things about the technology that we have in place is that it is upscalable, meaning that we can add things to it as opposed to buying equipment and then down the line having to replace the equipment. We can upgrade it very easily, and that's one of the benefits of having that. We're always looking for more funding for code enforcement and Tampa Fire Rescue to have them down there on a more frequent and regular basis. And also looking to see if we could expand the YES team. We feel that the value that they provide down there with being ambassadors, they are eyes and ears, and they act as we would, seeing things and being able to report it to us quicker, which allows us to have a quicker response. So that is the overall safety and security plan, the upper level view of it, and we are prepared to take any questions if you have them.
We do not have public comment for the staff reports. Councilmember.
If I could, Mr. Michelini was the one that asked for this. I wonder if we could just ask him if this answers his question that he had that meets that criteria.
I think they can be done off-site or not.
Yes, sir.
Is there your request for Mr. Michelini? I mean, I'm fine with that. I mean, it's your motion, and if you're responsive to it.
I'll make a motion to ask Mr. Michelini. The idea for this came from Mr. Michelini. I would just like to know if this answers the question that he had related to this.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Sure.
Just for him to say yes or no?
Yeah. Second?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Mr. Michelini. Does this answer your question? Does this satisfy the?
I think the question related to the CRA funding, and when we met with the police chief and Major DeFelice, they indicated that they would greatly appreciate additional funding for the activities that he just outlined. And in order to get CRA funding, you all have to make a finding here from City Council and refer it to the CRA for that request to be considered.
All right.
And that's why it was brought to the City Council first. And so, yes, the action plan he laid out, I think, qualifies for what the city requires in order to be referred over to CRA for consideration for additional funding.
Does anybody, if I could, does anybody from legal or staff know what form, Mr. Massey, do you know what form that would need to take? Do we need to make, what kind of motion would we need to make?
Morris Massey Legal Department, what the CRA statute provides is that the CRA can fund community policing activities, that the community policing activities are defined in the statute as TPD type of activities, not private security type of activities. Increased security over and above what would be normally provided by the city of Tampa.
Does City Council need to make a motion?
City Council should approve the plan that's been proposed by TPD. And if you already are providing, the CRA is already providing $250,000 in its budget for EBOR 1 for community policing efforts. If that plan requires some additional funding, and there is funding, and if there is funding available in the budget for EBOR 1 or EBOR 2, then we could look at amending the budget and providing additional funds to implement those policies.
Councilmember Miranda.
Thank you very much. I want to make sure, I'm not against this at all, but I want to make sure that, because the same 7 members sit as city council, they also sit as the CRA. So I want to make sure that, should we ask them, or should the CRA supposed to ask us? Which one is it?
City council should bless the plan that TPD has brought forward. Once you have blessed the plan, then we need to price out how it will cost, how much it will cost to implement it. If there's additional funding required, then that request, once this plan has been approved by you all as council, then that can move forward to the CRA for that funding request.
Okay.
But for them to ask us when we sit as a CRA board.
Correct.
Thank you
Let
very
me
much.
just make one statement clear here. This was not for private properties. This was for the
I
entire
understand.
Ybor City District.
We
And
understand.
that's what I was talking about.
Thank
We
you very much.
understand.
All right, Councilmember Carlson, would you like to make a motion to the effect of what Mr. Massey discussed?
Yeah, motion to approve the plan, what was it, public safety plan presented?
The community policing
The community
plan
policing-
that was presented today.
Motion to approve the community policing plan presented by TPD and to request the CRA board and staff to consider supporting it with funding.
If I may add an amendment, Mr. Carlson, with your permission, include the 2 names of the police officers, Mr. Major DeFelice and Deputy Chief Cates.
Okay, as presented by the 2 police officers.
Is there a second?
I motion to divide that question to one to approve the plan and then have a second question about the CRA funding.
Okay, motion, withdraw the other motion. Motion to
Motion to
approve.
divide the question, to have it as 2 different questions.
Motion to approve the community policing plan as, for Ybor as presented by 2 officers today.
We have a motion, we have a second? Second. Second from Councilmember Clendenin, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And now the CRA
The
question.
second one, and we can't obligate the CRA, but we can just ask, so, motion to ask the CRA board to consider us supporting this plan with funding.
We have a motion from Councilmember Carlson, do we have a second? Second. Second from Councilman Vieira, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
So that's a 5-2.
Motion carried with Clendenin and Henderson
May
voting
I,
no.
Morris Massey, may I suggest maybe it would be better, now that the plan has been approved, for TPD to then come before the CRA board with details about what additional funding might be required to implement the plan, and then the CRA could act upon that at that time. That may be the more appropriate way to handle this, just a suggestion.
And if I could just make one more comment, we could drill into all of this and have a longer discussion another day. I appreciate you all doing this. And I know the officers are available offline and talk to us as well. But the reason to consider one reason to consider more funding in Ybor is there's also a concern in places like South Howard that limited resources are being moved from one area to another. And so if we are able to better cover multiple areas of the city at the same time with additional funding, and the feeling in Ybor is so desperate that a group of business owners lobbied the state to get funding for the sheriff's department to do this. And so we'll see what the state comes forward with. But if we can do our best with TPD, because our folks are there every day and they know how to solve these issues. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Massey,
Yes, ma'am.
what is the length of time until the CRA for Ybor 1 sunsets?
I had to look at the list. I
Wanna
think
say it's
I think it's 2041. It's a little bit after the 2034 that most of the others lapse.
Okay.
They go later, about 5 years to 6 years
Okay,
later.
so one of the things I want to look at, while I appreciate the additional funding, and we can add additional funding, but while adding additional funding, we are going to start having the conversation about what happens when that funding disappears. Because anytime you add something additional, people expect it. So how we do that going forward is of major concern to me. Not saying that we don't need that, but what does that look like going forward for the city?
Well, that's correct. And another thing, and then this is more appropriate for discussion at the CRA board level, the amount of TIF dollars that are available from Ybor 1 and Ybor 2, it's much more limited than a lot of the other CRAs. So you've got some other projects that are ongoing, like the rebricking of 7th, some initiatives that we may have to weigh. You all, as policymakers, may have to weigh where you want the dollars to go, because there's a limit on how much TIF dollars we have available in those areas.
Thank you, you very much. That concludes everything, Councilman Carlson? Yeah, thank you. All right, we're gonna go back to 40 and 42.
Thank
These
you.
items were pulled by Councilmember Hurtak for discussion.
Mr.
Yes,
Maniscalco,
ma'am.
can I just add
Yes.
one thing? I just wanted to close out. I just wanted to, our commitment to safety and security, let you know that we do have a town hall Tuesday coming up, and that will be at Central Astoriano. So if anybody from council or any of the general public would like to come, all the TPD staff will be there.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Chair, if I may, I don't know if the fire item was supposed to come before these, I say because Chief Tripp is here, I don't, again, I
No,
don't.
these items were.
They were before?
we-
Okay.
We only moved them around because
You're
Councilman
right.
Candino was out of the
My
meeting. So
apologies.
we're gonna go
Thank
to
you.
40 and 42. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. The reason I pulled 40 and 42 is that they kind of go together. They're both lease agreements between the city and the University of Tampa. And when I read the first one, right now apparently the city owns property that is surrounded by the University of Tampa, and we lease it to them. And this that has happened for 50 years, and the new lease that's come up, in the first year of the date of this amendment, the tenant, I'm reading from the option of conveyance on the third page of this, or the first page of the renewal and amendment to lease agreement. Within 1 year from the date of this amendment, tenant may elect to take fee title to the premises by providing written notice to the landlord. Upon acceptance of such notice by the landlord shall convey the premises to the tenant. The landlord shall convey the premises to tenant for no additional consideration, which means no money. And so nowhere in this lease agreement does it say what we are getting in return for this. So my concern, first of all, is that we don't know how much this property is worth. We're giving away something that we don't know it's worth. So I wanted to ask staff if an appraisal has been done on this property.
Good afternoon, Abbye Feeley, Interim Administrator, Development and Economic Opportunity. If I may, just a moment, kind of give some form to the two lease discussions that are before you in relation to the University of Tampa.
Can we just talk about the first one?
Sure, an appraisal was not done. Believe it or not, this property, which is the hole in the donut, the city owns the property that McKay Auditorium is located on. The auditorium burnt down in the early 1990s, and the university rebuilt it at their full cost of, I believe it was upwards of $10 million. They have owned, operated, maintained that facility. That is not a city building. It is city land, but that building has been their building for all of these years. In relation to the lease, there has been a 50-year lease, a lease that we were just laughing about at lunch that was in effect before many of us were born. And it came up a couple years ago that the lease was approaching its expiration. And much like how we discussed negotiation this morning, we entered into negotiation with the university. It was Rebecca Johns and myself to go to the table with them. And we talked about not only what has happened in 50 years, but where we're going in the next 50 years. Because this really was dealing with more than just McKay. It was dealing with Plant Park, and which we're going to talk about also, and then our needs on the west side of the river. Our needs on the west side of the river as a city with the Build Grant and the forthcoming River Walk, only a part of that riverfront is in Plant Park, which is a historically designated park. The other part of that riverfront is on the University of Tampa's property. So we needed an easement from them, an easement larger than the easement we have right now, in order to be able to move forward with the Build Grant and the design for the West Riverwalk. So those were some of our priorities in the discussions. The last part of that discussion was, right now, there is a dawn to dusk provision.
I want to get to that.
But all
with
of these
the park.
pieces work together.
Okay, well then
Yeah.
I'd like to go back to 42
Okay.
then, because I have some questions for for the Director of Parks before I get to you on
Okay.
that. So then to go to 42, it's the lease for Plant Park, which we own but the city, but the university has been taken care of for years. So this would convey the ability for the university to continue to use the park, but to allow the city to use, it shall only be used for nonprofit, quasi-public purposes relating to its educational functions and program by the tenant. The tenant shall allow the premises from time to time to be utilized for public events subject to scheduling such use through the tenant's website and digital reservation system. Such use shall be subject to the reasonable insurance requirements and rules and regulations for use of the premises by the public as regionally established by the tenant from time to time. Provided, however, such rules and regulations shall not prevent the public from reasonable use of the premises. So my question for Mr. Mulkey is, why don't we just, basically it sounds like they're going to be making the decision on who can and cannot use the park. So why can't we retain control of the park and have them ask if, or have everyone ask if what they need when they want to use the park?
Good afternoon, Council. Tony Mulkey, Parks and Recreation Director, Councilwoman Hurtak. This is just kind of the traditional operations of the park. This was one of our first parks in the city of Tampa. Plant Park was the original home of a zoo. It has a very rich history, but for the past 50 years or so, as this was initiated through the University of Tampa agreement, it's been maintained, controlled by the university. We've explored and had conversations about how that could look with different entities coming to us, and it's actually a lot cleaner to have it where they have kind of primary control over this. Some of the history of this is with events that wanted to utilize that space and they were told no. And that actually dates back, that letter has been repeated multiple times through several administrations before Curtis Hickson was even established as an event park. Since then, we've obviously added to our inventory a little bit, and the original event has morphed through different control groups over that time and has found a nice home at Perry Harvey Park. So it has actually worked out, and I think we've had a relationship with the university for different activations and events along the way, but they do kind of have that primary control and maintenance aspect to it, and it's worked out for the most part. Is it perfect? It isn't, because it is a city plot, but they do maintain it and they do control it, and they have their university operations with security concerns and access concerns. It's not a great event park. It's not really built that way, but we do have other options now.
Can I
And
add
no,
to
I
that?
still have a few. Okay.
I just wanted to add to the logistics of
Yeah.
that. The city doesn't actually have public access to the park. All the roads around it, that's all University of Tampa property. So unlike Julian B. Lane, or where you pull in and there's a parking lot and there's public restrooms and there's other things, logistically, that has been a challenge in this looking and feeling like a regular city park. There are no public restrooms available at that park. There is no parking. The parking is if you're parking on the university property. And through, I think we told you we started these negotiations a while back when the issue of the public use of the park came up. And one of the things I did want to show you is through this negotiation, we have worked to now formalize the process with them, and that is what is in, is part of that agreement and is now on UT's website. When people are making public requests, there was not a formalized process for how that could be done before. And that is now, as part of these discussions over the past 2 years, a formalized process for making that request and providing insurance and other things, just like we do if you're coming to our park for a special event of some sort.
Thank you. To go further, though, when I started to research this and talk to Mr. Mulkey and some other folks, it came to the consideration of the West Riverwalk and their need for their student safety to close down portions of the new West Riverwalk from midnight to 5 a.m. But what I found out is that is not the only parcel that's going to be closing down on the West Riverwalk. So Mr. Mulkey, can you tell us about the other properties that are gonna have their gates closed to the public on this new $54 million Riverwalk?
Tony Mulkey, Parks and Recreation. I don't know the whole terms of all the easements. We do have the one section, the former related at Broreen. I forget the name of the property now, but it's the property
It was
that's.
the Manor West Riverwalk?
Yes, the Manor West Riverwalk does have
That
some.
has the roosting nest and all of that right there. Because it's Manor West. I would have to say, we're not done with those negotiations of those easements yet for that West Riverwalk. I mean, that's why Rebecca and I are kind of looking at, what do you mean, or what are you asking? Because
That's
we're
what I was
not.
told.
Can you provide a little bit more information?
Again, I was told that some more portions, including the related group property and some schools, would have some issues with being open.
I mean, we just, as part of the stadium, just redid the entire piece. That was part of putting the soccer stadium there. And I saw the other day that that's now has the new Riverwalk design. It's completed, it's open, people were walking on it.
It's been open.
So,
Yeah.
If I can interject a little
Yeah,
bit.
that's what I was looking for Mr. Mulkey.
Yes, the
talk to me
current
about
agreement for that stretch right now does have them access, but it doesn't connect to anything. So as the development moves forward, but that is in place at the moment.
So my point about all of this is that we have two properties that are owned by the city of Tampa that have been under lease for, or under, a lease agreement for 50 years. And now you're coming to us with an agreement about using public space that the public has not had a right to put any input on. So we have this public park that is owned by the city of Tampa. I think the public needs to be able to weigh in before we agree to give it to them for another 25 years to the University of Tampa. That's the one thing we haven't done, is talk to the public about how they would like to see this space. The public might even want this space to be sold to the University of Tampa. We haven't heard, but the fact that we have this West Riverwalk coming, this park will become a lot more integral to the city as it goes forward. And I am not comfortable approving a 25-year lease that the public has only had the ability to hear about through reading it on a consent agenda item. So what I would like to see is I would like to see these two, and I know Mr. Clendenin has more to speak to on this, but I would like to see that these two items be continued for a month or so that we can have a public hearing so that the community can talk about what they would like to see that park become.
Just from personal experience, I go to that park often, over the years often. I go to the rocking chairs on the veranda. I've never been trespassed at night. I've gone during the day and I've tied hammocks up to the trees along the water. I've never been told anything. I've gone 10 o'clock at night. I've gone 9 a.m. on a Sunday. I mean, I've always seen it as a public space. But I don't park on the property. I walk from City Hall, or if I've parked, I'll park where like the Oxford Exchange is at and come over. But I mean, I've never even had security because they have the little golf carts. They've never said anything. And I've gone with people. I've gone and taken photos. Someone I know took engagement photos. And no one's ever said anything.
No, but if their concern is security, we can't, we have had concerns about people wanting to use the park. We've had concerns, I'm concerned about shutting off access to the Riverwalk. And I think that if a negotiation has been made, that the public needs to be able to weigh in on if they're okay with these negotiations.
And what about the auditorium side?
The auditorium, I'm leaving that to Mr. Clendenin, but for me, this is the biggest issue of, this is a public park, and you're right, I've been doing the same thing, but to me, the issue is that they're gonna close a gate on the Riverwalk, and what's gonna happen is it's gonna be even more dangerous because people will simply trespass around it, because that's how it happens. If you close a gate on the Riverwalk, I'm simply gonna go around it. And that is what people will do. So again, I really believe that the public deserves to have input, and I believe we should have a public evening meeting to talk about what the public wants to see from this park, because they have not been able to have input for 50 years on how to use this park.
Ms. Councilwoman Hurtak, respectfully, this is a historically designated park, plant park. And I do not believe that it is eligible for programming beyond what you see there due to the historic designation. We can have that conversation. I also want to make clear that they have always had the right to close it from dusk till dawn for the last 50 years, and they don't. I am at that park 3 times a week myself. I live in Riverside Heights. I ride my bike there. I sit in the hammocks, whatever it is. It is open to the public, and it will remain open to the public, and this doesn't have anything to do, but if it's the pleasure of council and there's a motion for that hearing, I will get with Dennis Fernandez, because this is a historically designated, which I don't know that we have many other parks like that or any other parks like that. But this could not become a Curtis Hickson or just because of its landmark designation. But
And that
I
is
just
not-
want to provide that information so that you're making decisions based on all the information.
And I appreciate that, but to me, that's not the point. I don't want to make it into a destination, like an event park, but I do want the public who has not had input on what we can do with this, because it's been under a lease with the university. I understand that it's open, but I would still like the public to be able to weigh in. Now, again, obviously we have a difference of opinion on this, but I really believe that folks should weigh in on how we are negotiating this for closing hours and so forth. So that is the reason that I suggest this, but I'm going to leave it to other council members.
Councilman Carlson, do you have your microphone on too? I'll go to you next. Okay.
Just wow. Wow. This, with all due respect, the city of Tampa is changing. And we're engaging areas of the city that have never been engaged before in totally different and unique ways. So just because it's worked for the last 50 years doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for the next 50 years. And the city council, in a very risky voted to invest a substantial amount of money in the West River Walk to engage the west side of the river and to promote, different types of activities on that side. And obviously, this park is a part of that. And I'm going to get to the park first, so then I'll get to my other thing I'm mostly passionate about. But this asset is a big part of that development and what we're doing, and an integral part of this north-south corridor. And I agree with the chairman. I mean, I live walking distance from this park, and I utilize this park. I don't park on the property, but I do use this park in its current format. I'm a little shocked at the restrictions that I just saw of the control that is granted. But I'm going to transition away from the park, because I think Councilman Hurtek pretty much captured exactly what needed to be captured about the public use of this property. My issue, and again, during new business, I'm going to introduce a motion about how we dispose of properties or how we transfer or sell properties. But my issue is, one, I talked to Chief Bennett about this being on a consent agenda item. This should have been pulled by staff to be discussed, because having the renewal of a lease, obviously, of property that we've leased for, almost 50 plus years now, because the lease expired a couple years ago, but is one thing. But having that clause in there that an asset would transfer for free from city hands to private hands really needed to be better flushed out and discussed and amongst the public and council about what that means. And I understand the arguments, and I want to make sure I clarify this. The University of Tampa is a great partner with the city of Tampa. It's a great asset for the city of Tampa. It's wonderful to have them in the city of Tampa and to be able to work with them in the city of Tampa. It's one of our jewels. That being said, the 7 of us up here, and then the folks that work in the administration, we are the custodians of the assets for the people of the city of Tampa. We're the voices that represent these assets. And the University of Tampa has had fair use of this property for 50 plus years, and other parcels, because I know it's a complicated piecemeal parcels to be able to put together a major university in an urban area. They've been using this property, and yes, they rebuilt the auditorium after it burnt and all, but they've still been using the property for free. So that has a price tag. And having a clause in there that without the information, I want to know, how much is that property worth? Is it worth $10 or is it worth $100 million? And I want to know how much that's worth before I make a fiduciary decision about the disposition of that property. I may go right along with the administration's proposal on this, but I have to have that information. I need to know what's it worth so I can make that decision, because I need to be able to go to the taxpayer and say, yes, I just gave away a $50 million building, and I gave it away because of X, Y, and Z. Or I need to be able to go to the folks that are the Spartans of the world and say, I didn't give it away because of X, Y, and Z. I mean, so all that's got to come before us before I can, in all good consciousness, make that decision for the city and the role that I'm happen to be not sitting on the beach, but sitting up here on this dais. We need to know what these properties are worth. It's you know, I'm going to have to say this out loud, because I'm also concerned because the mayor's on the board of trustees for the UT. So I almost feel like these decisions in this contract needs to come out from underneath this chain, or because it just doesn't seem right to me. I don't know. I have to say that publicly, and even though I don't think there's nothing there, and I don't mean to be conspiratorialist and all, she's a Spartan, she's a proud Spartan, and she sits on the board of trustees. Something just doesn't feel right to me, and I think I'd like to see this hashed out a little bit better. Thank you.
Councilmember Cross.
A tough issue. I agree with my colleagues in principle, and I've asked a lot of the same questions on other properties, and we should be consistent and thorough. I think that, as Ms. Feeley said, with a full presentation of the context of the different properties and the relationships and everything, I think it will be understood. For disclosure, I went to University of Tampa. I graduated from there. I think Ms. Miranda did as well. I don't think I have to recuse myself, but if Marty tells me to, I will. I was around, Dr. Vaughn was one of my professors, and I was around when he raised the money for the business school, and he raised, the first part of it was like $40 million, and I don't know how much of it went inside versus the building, but the building was derelict, and I don't know if it could have been torn down at the time or not, but it was, the University of Tampa saved that building, just like with Plant Hall, which is, I think, the most important building in Tampa. The Chislers and University of Tampa, started by the Tampa Chambers, saved that building, and they maintain it. I mean, again, looking at the full context, there's the maintenance of the park, there's the maintenance of Plant Hall, there's the maintenance of this building and whatever other properties. And all of that costs money, and I think the relationship should be looked at in the context. And so I would ask, if we bring it back or have some kind of public hearing, that staff be able to give us a lengthy presentation on it before the public present, because the public needs to know, if we're going to inform the public needs to know the full context of it. I'll also say that, well, those buildings may not be there but for the University of Tampa, or those properties may not be in the same shape but for the University of Tampa, because they raise money with the Chislers and others to save those buildings. And they've spent hundreds of millions of dollars over the last few years upgrading them and then building other buildings. The University of Tampa is a huge economic engine. It's a provider of employment in Tampa. As Dr. Vaughn used to say, try going to a restaurant downtown and not finding a waiter who's a UT student or grad. The graduates are all over the place. We've got 3, I think, on city council. We've got folks throughout. When I went to the University of Tampa in the 80s, they had gone through a time where they had football, and then they got rid of it, and then they gave scholarships to lots of students, and then they started to lose money. And I was there during that part, and then Bruce Sampson came in, a business leader, and he was brought in to save and turn around the University of Tampa. And those of you who are around remember this. The property that's now owned by Related, that was the Cesar Palais property, that was a 9-story former hotel that was a dorm. Where Mise en Place is, that was called Spartan Arms. That was owned by the University of Tampa. And there was a house that had been gifted to the University of Tampa as the president's house. In 1988 or 89, the University of Tampa had to sell all of that just to stay afloat. And they only had about 1,100 students. Dr. Vaughn came in, and now they have like 12,000 students, and they're going. But their success in the last 30 years, a lot of it was due to him, a lot of it was due to the trustees, the money that was given by people like John and Chuck Sykes. We don't know what the future holds. The future of education is online, and it's changing rapidly. We don't know where everything is going. And I think we need to be careful with a really important economic engine. Just like I'm protective of the port and the airport, I want to be protective of USF and UT, because they're huge economic engines. The last thing I'll say is, I voted against the West Riverwalk expansion, not because I'm against the Riverwalk, I'm against the funding mechanism for it because it's gonna cost a lot of interest. But the other reason is I knew that the University of Tampa objected to this. And what happened is they were switching presidents in the middle of it. And had Dr. Vaughn still been there, I think he would have been in front of us objecting to the West Riverwalk because they see it as a major security threat. Now we have a new president, and she's probably not gonna make the same kind of statements, but it's not that University of Tampa wants to block people out. It's a major security threat for them that these things are open like this. Last thing I'll say, and this is not directly related, I've been flooded with messages in the last 24 hours that apparently somebody's talking about changing the name of the University of Tampa to UTampa. And I've been asked by a lot of people to please ask them not to do that. So whoever's watching for the University of Tampa, please don't do that. Thank you.
Councilmember Miranda.
They must be sending it to you because they know you very well, I guess. I don't know. I haven't got any, but I'm not looking for any either. But I'm glad that this conversation is here. I'm just laughing inside of myself, thinking of what we have given away. The land between Columbus Drive and MLK, and the land between Himes and Del Mabry. That was all city property. And it was done on a piece of paper and given away to the county for zero, nada. You know why? Because they forgot to do it when they're negotiating to build the stadium. It was city property. The city cannot write off ad valorem tax. So they deeded it over to the county. I'm not saying that's acceptable. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. But I'm just saying what happened. And I'm so happy to be just lonesome by myself, because I can also say what I want to say. This is the same thing we're doing with the CIT tax. Right in my pocket, I have the monies that we spent in giving away $2 million a year to the tune of about $23 million. Gone for no reason. Why? Because you made a bad contract. I'm not going to say the who, when, or where. But these are the things that are coming up. So I'm happy that this conversation is going on. I'm happy what Mr. Carlson said. The building did burn down, and then that building, where they used to have wrestling, Gorgeous George, remember the guy with the blonde hair, and Don Cherry and all them guys, and the boxing matches, and even concerts. That was how small Tampa was. We didn't have nothing. In fact, I'll tell people, have you ever seen the alligator and the bear at University of Tampa property or the city property of the park? They said, are you crazy? What have you been smoking? There was a bear and an alligator there. When I used to get the bus with my father, get off at the church and walk over to see the Tampa Smokers play the Cuban Hurricanes. Every week we used to do that when they were playing here. So there's no bear and there's no alligator, but there's a lot of memories about the park and about the whole system. But we have a difficult situation. You don't own the building, but you own the land, where McKay used to be. You own the park, but you don't own the streets. You got to be a genius to come out of this one. Because what is it you own? You own half the right of way, but you don't own the other half of the right of way, I assume, for the Riverwalk. What else is it we own or don't own? It's a calamity of errors that have been working on it for years, and it worked so far. That's all I can say. Am I a graduate from there? Yes. I don't take from there, I give to there like Mr. Carlson does. And it's helped so many people in this city of Tampa. And what this gentleman did over there, you have to be a genius to do what he did. And I'm not going to mention the name because I don't want to embarrass him about how well he's done for the university. He's no longer there. He retired. No one has done what he's done. About $1 billion in assessments and done that he's done in the buildings. It's just an amazing place. And like Mr. Carlson said, it's larger now in enrollment than Princeton and Wake Forest. And it used to be no bigger than Orange Grove Elementary School. That's what he's done. I'm going to compare with an animal to another animal. But it is what it is, and we live in a different society, and I understand. I'm not opposed to anybody coming here and having a hearing on it. That's fine with me. But at the end of the day, it's what is it you want to do, and how you're going to do it, and how you're going to settle both issues on one side or the other. They got to come to an agreement, because if not, you got another war going on inside the city of Tampa. Thank you.
Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you. first to clarify for Mr. Carlson, I met the president, Dr. Dahlberg, I believe is her name, at the Downtown Tampa Partnership Luncheon last week, and she is not promoting Tampa. She wants for us to refer to the institution as the University of Tampa. She was the provost of Texas Christian University, and she said when people say UT, everyone knows they're talking about the Texas Longhorns. So we need to create our own brand, and by using the word Tampa University in full, no one else has that. So that was what she was saying, but not Tampa, University of Tampa, and she corrected people a few times during the meeting, so it was kind of nice. But anyway, University of Tampa is on the map. This is a very interesting conversation for me because it's, talking about property and, what we have a right to do or not do. So I'm just going to stay in learning mode about this as it relates to other things that come up in the future about spaces in Tampa and why in this position on city council, many times we have given things away, historical spaces and places. And so whatever is decided, I just think that we need to consider every aspect of the decision and what's best for the city of Tampa as well as the University of Tampa. I had no idea they had hammocks. I literally assumed that all of that belonged to them and that we didn't have access to it as a public.
You can go hook it up and people hang out all the time.
Yeah, I realized that, but in terms of an assumption, I did not recognize that. And so, and I'm sure there are probably a lot of people out there that feel the same way that I do, but the fact that we do have access is wonderful, and I just wouldn't want to mix with that, but we'll see. Thank you.
Councilmember Hurtak, back to you.
Thank you. I think this conversation has been very interesting, and that's why I wanted to bring it to light. And I think that Councilmember Carlson, what you're talking about safety and security, I grew up in the shadow of the University of Florida during the student murders. So I know exactly what it is to worry about security for an institution. But this is, again, why I think it's a good reason to have a meeting to discuss it with the public. Does the public want to, is the university interested in buying the park? How does the public feel about that? Would the public, how do they feel about not being able to access the Riverwalk all the time? Because right now, there are gates, but they're open all the time. Because I've been there after midnight, walking or biking or doing whatever after I see a show and have dinner. So my point, what I would like to do is to continue both of these items to October 17th to allow for an evening public meeting to talk about this, to receive an appraisal for the property that the building sits on, and I do realize that can be difficult, but what that looks like. And then I also want a map of, actually, I'm gonna have that separate. So these are the two things that I would like to have before October 17th.
Yes, ma'am.
Do we have a second?
Do we have a second? Second from Councilmember Clendenin. Yes, Ms. Feeley.
In relation to the appraisal, so I'd like to talk about that, because this property is zoned as part of the university. The university came before council as a PDA application. I can't remember the number right off the top of my head. I did the rezoning. So it cannot be developed as anything else other than university related. The appraisals are running $3,000 to $6,000. I don't know what an appraisal is going to bring to you in relationship of the value of the property, because the value belongs under the zoning of the university. It's not commercial general where I could tell you, oh, we could sell this and build a Walmart here. We can't do that. So I'm trying to think how that would be helpful in your decision-making process and in, the information that you're considering, because we may expend that money and it may come back and say it's worth zero, because the only person who can develop it is UT. And it's site plan controlled. So too, I believe, if I'm recalling correctly, the footprint of the building that is there. That is all that property is entitled to.
And again, so, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
But also, I looked it up in the property records. The property appraiser's records has both Plant Park and that parcel as belonging to the University of Tampa. So
I think we discussed that as part during the negotiation. I also want to say for just a moment, in these negotiations, I was at the table with Dr. Vaughn on 3 different occasions for several hours in relationship to the security and what the university, and I don't want to disclose what the university's operational procedures are in relation to security, because that's not my place, but crimes, things that happen, the fact that Riverwalk is in proximity to a dorm, I mean, those things impact how the university fulfills their obligations and security and reporting, and there's a lot of other things there. So I think while having a public discussion, it's not just the public, it's the university as well, because they are the partner, they are the adjacent property owner, they are the most adversely impacted or positively impacted by what those discussions, and through our discussions, there are limitations as to what may occur within proximity in order for them to retain certain accreditations and other things that run with the university.
And that is fine, but they are one actor in this. We're another actor, and the third actor is the public.
Understood.
So if this is something where the Riverwalk has to go onto the river, like sometimes it does on the east or on the current Riverwalk, maybe that's a solution. I understand that there's cost to that.
We talked about it.
But there's, I mean, right now on our current Riverwalk, properties like hotels simply put up a big gated fence. There are certainly ways. Yeah, they have fences along the hotels, and you use key cards to get in. I bike the Riverwalk all the time. So there are...
Those fences are not on our property.
Yes. Yes, I know.
Okay,
That's what I'm saying.
I just want to be clear. The park is one part, and there's properties are another.
But that is how those businesses have chosen to secure their properties. They've chosen to put fences on their properties. And the university could do that, could go that route. They could fence off Plant Park. They could fence off the Riverwalk. So they have options. But again, I want public comment on this so that the public is part of this. I understand you disagree, but I believe the public really wants to have a say into this, or should have a say.
Clendenin Carlson.
I got to lower my blood pressure just a little bit. Most of these things that are being said here today can all be true, and this still isn't a good deal for the taxpayers of the city of Tampa. All these things that Councilman Carlson, everything that everybody said could absolutely be true, and yet it still could be a bad deal. We have a fiduciary responsibility to make sure that we are looking out after the pocketbooks of the people who own the assets. That being said, one of the things that's frustrating me is I'm listening to the conversation about security. Okay, we are not a podunk town anymore. This is not a small little town. I mean, I think of New York University, George Washington University, all urban campuses, and then you go beyond the United States, across the world, where the universities are integrated into the city. Well, guess what, Tampa? We've arrived. We are now America's greatest city. And we have an urban campus, which part of the charm of the University of Tampa is the integration. We have a dorm downtown that's all students. We have a hotel downtown that's mostly students. They're all integrating with downtown. You know, we have the Straz Center with the conservatory program. You know, it's a complete integration. So saying that implying that there's a safety concern because we're not creating an impound or a prison camp around the University of Tampa for a security zone, I think is disingenuous. I mean, integration of the University of Tampa is the charm and the wonderful part of this campus. The fact that it is so intertwined with the living thing that is the city of Tampa. And again, this is welcome to the big time. We are a city. We're a city now. This is not a small town. But again, I want to go back to everything that is said today about all of this can be true, and yet we still have to be responsible for what the actual cost is. We have to know what are we actually giving away, and we don't have that information. And I would beg to differ, Ms. Feeley, on while PDA and zoned, there is still a value to property, and there's still you could still assign, because that campus could burn down tomorrow, or the tides change and things repurpose that property. I mean, things happen as things get reinvented, and its present use and its present circumstances, what it is. But there's still a value to it. There's still a value to that building that's sitting on top of it. I mean, I don't know what our agreement was when they built the building on land that we owned. Because that's not really spelled out in this, I don't think, about the building versus the property, other than the fact that they can tear it down if they chose to. So, I mean, there is still a value. I think we, as custodians of the pocketbook, we would be irresponsible not to have that information before we made this decision.
Councilmember Carlson.
A couple things in response to that. One is, in the issue of the Riverwalk is not, the West Riverwalk is not just security. We have needs all over the city, and including interest, it's gonna be something like $80 million. Including interest is gonna be something like $80 million that we could have spent on other things. And I don't mean that we shouldn't have a Riverwalk there eventually, but if we're doing it so a developer can redevelop Lake or the land next to it, that's not a good investment of money. And so that's a separate issue. But the other thing is, I agree we need to look at the context of everything. That's why I'll vote for the motion, because I agree that we should have this and it should be heard by the public, just like everything else is. And just because I like an organization doesn't mean I don't think that we should scrutinize it. However, there's a difference between looking at, you could call it highest and best use. Somebody could come in and offer us to turn Tampa Theater into a hotel. And we know that it's an important cultural asset, and we wouldn't allow that to happen. And so with important historic buildings and historic spaces and strategic assets and economic engines, there's a different economic driver to it. It's not that we could lease that building to the private sector for X amount, and we have to look at it in the context of what the engine is for the community. So what I would like to do, with your permission, I would like to propose a friendly amendment that would request that UT and city staff be asked to join that conversation to present to us these items and the larger context of the University of Tampa relationship with the city in a presentation not to exceed 15 minutes. I think it needs to be a meaty conversation about the overall relationship, including whatever properties may not be included in these. What is the overall relationship? What are the economics of it? And the University of Tampa can also show what their economic impact is at the same time.
So you're asking that as part of the October 17th meeting, not part of the public meeting that they're gonna have in the evening before that? Because that's what I really want. I want there to be an evening.
You're gonna make a separate motion?
Yes, I guess if I need to, I'll make a separate motion to have, I would like an evening meeting about this as well.
Well, whichever one you think, but I just think, considering the University of Tampa is probably watching, but they're not here, and I think.
No, I agree. I think what you said makes perfect sense. So I'm asking for items 40 and 42 to be continued to October 17th with the inclusion of the University of Tampa and feedback from a evening public meeting to be held between now and then, and an appraisal.
Can't do that between, I'm sorry.
Okay,
Abbie,
then you can't, then what is a
between now and then,
better,
I'm
what is
sorry.
a better date than?
November 7th and November 21st.
Well,
No, November 7th. Would that work? Or November 21st?
21st.
Let's do November 21st.
so is the evening meeting that you're requesting a public meeting with you, this council?
No, it's just sharing. It's like we do with any other development meeting where you tell people, hey, this is what we're planning on doing, getting feedback from the public. What else, what kinds of things do they want to see happen with this?
I'm sorry to be, so how is that being noticed? Where is that being held? Because I can't notice the entire city. I mean, when you have development meetings that you notice people within a given boundary and those are the people that come. This is a citywide park and I'm hearing the recommendations you're bringing forward. I would suggest doing what was suggested by Councilman Carlson, is that that's one comprehensive discussion where you're letting the public know we are going to hear this presentation, and then we are going to have a second item on discussing the public's input on the use of Plant Park, versus trying to have a public meeting on Plant Park that then folds into the public discussion that you're then having on that other evening.
So the idea is similar to any other development. You could do it 300 feet out from around the university. That is fine, however you want to notice. But the issue is people have questions. When it's a meeting, when we're just having an open meeting here, people can't come up and ask questions and get their questions answered. Public comment is simply that, comment. There isn't a back and forth. And that's what I'm trying to give, is a back and forth between the public and the staff about the plans for this space. Mr. Massey.
A couple of questions on the motion and the different ideas I'm hearing from council. I understand that you would like to have a community meeting about this, that it doesn't necessarily involve a formal hearing before you all, which is fine, and we could probably arrange that. I guess I don't think the appraisal is a necessary component of that meeting. I don't.
No, it is not a point in the meeting. The appraisal would be
Part of what we present to you before you make your
Correct.
final decision. So
Correct.
it sounds like to me that we're talking about two meetings. One, a community informational meeting to gather feedback from the community, and then also a more formal public hearing before you all, which we can try to work with the clerk's office and schedule both, and maybe come forward with a form notice letter. I'm going to be coming forward with a lease affecting city park property where we're going to be doing exactly the same thing, basically.
okay. So would it be easier if I divide, Mr. Massey? Would it be easier if I divided these into separate motions?
Or at least in your motion, be clear that what you're asking for is
Okay.
a community input meeting and one date, and then on a separate date, having a public hearing before you all about approving or not approving the lease agreement. So, yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
One more.
Sure.
What is it exactly? What is it exactly are you trying to get appraised? Their building or the ground space?
The ground space, because we own the land.
Just the ground space?
Yeah, because we don't own the building. We
Right.
own the land.
Okay.
But even if,
I don't mean that, do we own the building? I don't know.
no,
I know they built it.
no, we
No,
don't.
she said we don't.
So they built it without, under what agreement did they rebuild the building? Is that?
Under the terms of the lease agreement, we were given permission to do that.
Okay.
Yeah, because in the lease agreement, it says that they can do stuff, they just
I
have
know
to
they
come
can
to
tear,
us.
I know they can tear it down.
Yeah, they have to come to us before they can make that decision.
So the purpose of the appraisal, once we get it, what are we supposed to do with this information in terms of just having the value of it?
Yes, because we're responsible for the fiduciary aspects of the city, and we always need money. So if the value of this, because it's the donut hole in the donut, is only $5,000, then great. That's something that we can easily give away without a lot of drama. If we find out it's worth $5 million, that's a conversation that needs to be had. And we would be doing the public a disservice to not know what that value is before we make a decision.
Ma'am,
Yes, sir. Mr. Shelby, then Mr. Councilman Carlson, then Mr.
and maybe I'll regret injecting myself, Mr. Massey, but I saw that you did, and I just was hoping to, because I'm sitting here listening to this, and my sense is, taking all this in from where I sit, this is a very complex situation based on years of multiple transactions that have created a context that I don't see how can possibly be explained to the public, showing up as a public information meeting based on the concept that what they see is Plant Park and a building, not knowing the context. My recommendation would be that they would have the opportunity to be able to see that as you would with the informational meeting that was made initially, to bring that before the city council. And then on that basis, everybody would at least have the context to know that when they have the opportunity to come in, it would be unfortunate, first of all, the logistics to be able to plan a meeting in such a way that would be able to provide the public with that basis of information that would be coming to council in order to have the predicate to be able to understand the situation to how you got to where you are today, and what then are your options for what you can and cannot do.
I'm sorry, but what you're telling me is the public is not, what I hear, and I know you didn't mean this, is that the public isn't smart enough to figure it out. And I disagree with that. I think that if this presentation was made to the public, it's weighing in on whether or not the public thinks it's a good idea, because basically what we're doing is we're trading land for access for additional access to the Riverwalk. Is that a deal that the public wants to be made?
I understand that, and I can understand that that's why on the consent docket today, you do not want to move forward. I understand that's clear. But in terms of the questions of what the public wants, I am not familiar. I do get the city emails that come into city council. I am not familiar about what the depth of the public's information is up until this point, other than what's on the city's website.
Correct, and which is why we're having a community input meeting where they can share this information, where people can ask those questions. This is very complicated, and I am not comfortable saying, sure, we'll just, because yeah.
Oh, I'm not suggesting to council that they take action on this. I'm just suggesting to council that from where I sit, that there are a lot of issues in here, and interestingly, and I look back to the question, and I was sitting here when that PDA was granted, and the question would be, well, were all these issues and these intricacies all brought to that city council that made that decision?
Probably
not. No. And,
Wait, Carlson's next, and Ms. Feeley.
Two points in regard to the appraisal. I also agree with getting appraisals. I think that I'm not going to put words in her mouth, but I agree with Ms. Feeley's point of view that considering the encumbrances on this land, it's probably going to come back to be worth nothing or very little. You could always do a hypothetical about what happens if the University of Tampa closed or sold it or whatever, but the reality of this current situation is going to show it very low. And probably what they're thinking is, how are we going to go through the RFP process? Some of the purchasing process I'm hearing are taking 6 to 8 months now. Anyway, I agree that we should get numbers like that. I've been looking for one on Hannah Avenue. I'd like to see how much that building is worth that we spent $220 million on.
Yep.
The other, what?
All roads lead back to.
Yeah, baby, he's not gonna let Hannah go.
The other thing though is that if you have a night meeting, I think you also ought to invite University of Tampa to partner, and
maybe have it there.
yeah, they probably would host it. And one of the points that Marty was making, the same one I did, is that we should explain the broader context, not just these items. They should understand the overall. The public should understand the overall. I think that my day job used to be public engagement, public input. I think that we probably could accomplish the same thing, but by doing it in a night meeting or day meeting of city council, we just have to make sure we schedule plenty of time. But that way, we also get to hear all the input.
Okay.
Ms. Feeley, and then Councilmember Clendenin.
Let me talk before Ms. Feeley. Do you mind? Because I kind of concur with Councilman Carlson and Ms. Feeley on this. I think that, unless staff was to say, oh yeah, that we could pull this off flawlessly, but I don't know if they necessarily see the procedures, the rules, and to be able to accommodate what we're trying to do there. I think having a publicly noticed council meeting with this on the agenda and inviting that was going to be the second part of I already just looked at the calendar to see if that was there. That was going to be part of why I asked to speak next. I think having a publicly notice, having this accomplished, because it's like you can't weigh in on something unless you've got all the information. And the only place to get all the information is where all the information is presented. Otherwise, you're only making assumptions based on pieces of information. So conveniently, on the 21st, there is a night meeting, an alcohol beverage night meeting. And I would say that perhaps this council would entertain moving this discussion to the evening session of the 21st. So to afford public opportunity to come in and talk, probably make it a little bit easier on everybody. And we could have this question asked and answered. And I'll just take one point of privilege to say that I would actually almost, if I felt that the Plant Park was not part of the integrated Riverwalk in its fullest and best use, I may actually consider a motion to reconsider the funding of the West Riverwalk, because that is such an important part of the West River project. So that's the weight that I put on this. As much as I want to know the fiduciary side of the land transfer, but if I felt that there was going to be a withdrawal or pullback from usage of the park, I would really consider my decision. And I'm a big advocate of West Riverwalk. I mean, I was an advocate for it. I think it's a good thing for the city, but not if we're gonna miss this gigantic hole.
Ms. Feeley and then Ms. Hurtak.
I was gonna accept his recommendation.
Okay.
So
But-
a motion to move the meeting to.
However,
the 21st.
to move it to the evening session on the 21st. Ms. Lucas, how many items can we currently have on staff reports? I believe it's 7? Yes. So, but I also moved that since there's a regular session before that, that we limit staff reports to 4, so that we get a break
Okay.
during regular session of that day.
I second.
Could you just say the motion again?
Yes, I will start again. I'm sorry, Ms. Feeley wants to say something before I restate the motion.
Abbye Feeley, the only thing I wanted to say was, part of this too, and I think I brought it up with the historic designation. I'm going to take some additional time to go back with Mr. Fernandez and look at when the park was designated, what that allowed, because I think that is an integral part in this discussion. You can't say to somebody, what would you want to see here, if we know we can't give it to you. And I think that level setting those expectations in relation to the historic landmark nature of that park is essential in this discussion.
And I think it would also be very beneficial to actually, since I couldn't find it on the property appraiser's website, it showed UT as owning all of it, to actually delineate what we own.
We have that.
Yeah, because that I was not
Sometimes
able to
the
find.
Property appraisers, the piece in the GIS doesn't close and it spills, so, but we do have that.
Yeah, because I think that would be helpful to this.
Just Morris Massey, just so, the property appraiser's maps are not always accurate, so, and this relationship because the relationship between UT and the city is longstanding, and these leases are long-term ground leases, and they own some property here, we lease some property to them there. It's very hard for the property appraiser to kind of figure all that out, so that's
Sure.
why it shows up that way.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that, because basically they're both non-taxing authorities, so it doesn't really matter. But, so I'm gonna rescind my other motion and start again.
Okay.
I think that's the easier way to do it.
Let's start again.
So I would like items number 40 and 42 to be continued to the evening session of City Council the evening council session on November 21st. Ms. Lucas, do we know how many items we have for the evening session?
They wouldn't be set yet.
Okay. Well, then, could we also choose to limit the items there that we could hear in the evening?
It's on our schedule.
Well, they said that they haven't been, none of them have been set yet.
Yeah, there's nothing on it.
Yeah, so November, the alcoholic beverage for November wouldn't be set until mid-October. It should have already been submitted, but I would need to try to check with Ms. Doc in the interim to see what's already been filed, because we do have a published schedule, and they do know that you would consider 13 items. So I need to get that number or that answer for you before I can say, yeah, limit it. So.
Okay, not a problem, and if we need to move it, we can. But, so let me finish my motion. So the motion is to move items 40 and 42 to November 1st evening session on November 21st. That would include input from the University of Tampa and an appraisal. And a map showing what the city of Tampa actually owns. Oh, yeah, I was gonna do that later. Ms. Lucas, would you like me to limit the items for the regular session in
That
a
would be a
different
separate
motion?
separate motion, please.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Mr. Massey.
Could I interject, maybe you want to add to your motion, that this would be in the nature of a public hearing?
Correct.
And that staff would be directed to notify property owners in the same, and registered neighborhood groups in the same manner that we would for any sort of land development type of application, if that's your design?
So moved.
Yes, Mr. Shelby.
Question. Related to the alcoholic beverage special uses, will those precede this, or will those follow this? And if that's the case, what do you then notify the applicants for the special uses that are going to schedule to be coming in on November 21st?
Why don't we just put it first on the agenda?
Yeah, we'll put it first.
Well, we'll put this first on
the agenda. Yep.
And how long will this meeting last?
Well, you know, honestly, can we wait to see how many we have?
Yeah, I think we ought to do that.
Can we just wait to see how many we have?
We'll put it on the agenda, and since the agenda doesn't exist, you know, because it hasn't been.
That'll be
put-
fine, thank you. That's
Okay.
a
Yes,
solution.
Councilmember Vieira.
Thank you very much. For that, if we put it first or on the agenda, why don't we have a time limit to it?
Say something like, we were elected to be here 24 hours a day.
No, I just mean
Not you, I'm just
that
saying.
if we're gonna have other people who have hearings
Yeah.
and we're gonna put it before them, we should consider a time limit.
So LaChone just confirmed there's 7 alcoholic beverage applications and there's 4 comprehensive plan amendments for that night. So you have 11 items already. So,
Okay.
and my suggestion would be you hear the 11 first and then you have this maybe a time certain later on versus making the 7 wait for the duration of, or if you're not gonna set a time limit as
Well-
suggested by Councilman Vieira.
Honestly, with that in mind, I think that we can also consider January 30th of 2025, where there are no alcohol beverage being considered.
And you guys object to that?
Okay.
We've already waited 2 years, right? We can wait
Yeah,
a few more
that's-
months?
So then I would move it to the January 30th, I'll start again. Items number 40 and 42 to be continued to January 30th, 2025, for additional public comment and appraisal of the land under the building being considered, and a map showing the actual parcels that the city of Tampa owns relative to the rest of the University of Tampa.
What about Plant Park?
Yes, yeah, that's both. It's
Okay.
anything the city of Tampa owns within the confines of the University of Tampa footprint.
We have a motion, do we have a second? We have a second from Councilman Clendenin, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Wait,
501. First thing. And I have
Wait, did you take the vote? Okay. I just wanted a vote.
We just did it.
We didn't get to it.
Yeah, you did.
No, because Mr. Shelby would like to know what time, 5:01 PM,
Yes,
January
I
the
just said
25th?
that.
And I guess the question would be, does staff know how many would be set? Or is there a determination of how many can be set relative to that night? In other words, are we removing alcoholic beverage special uses from that evening or not?
They don't have that yet. This is too far in
Yeah,
advance.
it's way too far in advance. They had November 21st, but this January 25th is. Yes, ma'am?
30th.
So typically, and I can't speak this right now, but typically you do not have alcoholic beverage in November or in December because of the holidays. So when applicants come in, they know that there's a 60-day lull on those hearings. That's how it's been over the past 10 years or so. So I don't want to then put small businesses or other people in a position where then there's no alcohol in January, but I don't know that we have that schedule exactly published yet, but I can work on that. So, January 30th, isn't that the 5th Thursday of the month?
This January 25th.
Yes, but we don't have any meetings on the 2nd, so there's only 4 weeks.
But typically your evening meetings are on the 2nd and the 4th Thursdays of the month.
Yes,
So
but
this would be
in
an extra.
No, but in
No.
January, they're on the 3rd and the
And the
5th
5th,
because we
okay.
have the first week off.
Okay.
That's, it kind of wiggles its way. Would it be best to limit the number of alcohol permits to 5 instead of 7? And no rezoning hearings? Like, can we, or
Well, there wouldn't be a
comp plan amendments?
rezoning.
I'm
Oh,
sorry,
no
I
plan
meant comp
amendments?
plan amendments.
I think that's fine.
Yeah, we're so far in advance.
I'm looking at Eric in
Well,
the back
that's why
row,
I'm saying so far in
I
advance.
think that's fine. We would
Okay.
just notate on the schedule to the applicants that we would be taking the first 5 cases and then whatever. And if we would need to make an adjustment, perhaps, and come to you and say we need an extra on another night, maybe that
Yeah.
would, but we'll have to see because they wouldn't file yet for
Yeah.
January. Okay.
I think that's fine. So 5 alcohol cases on the evening of January 30th. No more than, sorry.
You're not gonna force people to come in and get alcohol.
Come, get alcohol.
So we have a motion and we had a second from Councilmember Clendenin, correct?
Yes.
Mr. Shelby, is that, you ready? I'm gonna vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay.
I don't like it. Can we have discussion a little bit? I mean, I know she made the motion.
We had a lot of, let's
No,
go.
we didn't. You jumped right to the motion. I just think that we should keep alcohol as that and not add anything else to it. And just find another day that works for everyone and advertise it. I don't.
Okay.
No, I feel like we should blend those two things. Okay. Even though we should offer, we do need to provide an opportunity for the public to come and.
You want a special call meeting?
Yeah, we could do a special call.
It's that important, but I just don't think it should be part of the alcohol day, and I would not support that. I would support having it, but not on that day, because it's also closer to the holiday as well. We're getting ready to go into Thanksgiving.
No, it would be January 30th.
January 30th, not I thought you said November 21st.
Yes, but there were too many cases, too many alcohol cases.
It's so much going on here, I am losing it.
Nothing's scheduled in January, so we're starting with a clean.
So you said January
30th.
alcohol. Okay, I'm sorry. I thought we were on November 21st.
No, I did January 30th, and then we're limiting the alcohol cases to 5. No,
Because there's nothing there right now.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, fine. If that's what you want, I can be agreeable.
Well, I think that's good, and the reason I will argue for it as well is the fact that it's, that way staff doesn't have to come twice.
Yeah, it's something we already do, so,
Yeah.
okay.
All right, well, let's do a roll call vote per request of the clerk.
Yes, I am.
Miranda's absent. Carlson?
Yes.
Hurtak?
Yes.
Clendenin?
Yes.
Henderson?
Yes.
Vieira? And Maniscalco?
No.
Motion carried with Maniscalco voting no and Miranda being absent at vote.
30th.
I'm certain.
And then
Yes,
I have
ma'am.
one more motion. I have a motion for Mr. Mulkey, and not quite sure when we're going to do this, if you don't mind coming forward. And again, this might also be with the legal staff. But I think one thing that wasn't given to us, one of the pieces of information when we were told about the West River Walk was this is where it's going. There was no conversation about the fact that we hadn't gotten agreements to use some of the space yet. So I would like to have a meeting or a hearing. I don't know what the timetable would be, but just to find out which parts of the Riverwalk are accessible, will be accessible. I'm just concerned about that. If we're putting $80 million into this, to not have it be accessible all the time. So, and I think the public needs to know that. As Mr. Clendenin said, it could change things. And we were not told of this when the discussion came about the Riverwalk. We were shown a plan that we weren't told that it was that there were still negotiations to be had.
Afternoon again, Tony Mulkey, Parks and Recreation. So my comment was referring to the current easement agreement at that one location. We can certainly go back and review and provide an update to council for information on that, because as far as the legal aspect of it, I might not have all the updated information on that, and obviously we want to make sure we're transparent.
Absolutely, and so I'd like to do that after our January workshop. So perhaps February 20th, 2025.
Yes, council member.
My only concern about waiting that long
Oh, okay.
is
Sure.
where are we at as far as contracts, bonding, spending money? Because if this becomes so untenable that we're gonna pull support for this construction because of this major issue of lack of use of property, I don't want it to get too far away from us.
I agree, but I think a big resounding part of the use of property is the University of Tampa.
Right.
So that's the only reason. I mean, and as we found, because this took over 2 years to put together, these negotiations aren't quick. I mean, I'm happy to do it earlier, but that was my main reason.
Well, I'll just throw that out in the atmosphere. I won't take it any further than that, but just a concern that I don't want to, put this.
Mr. Mulkey, what do you recommend?
I would have to circle back to our planning team as well as real estate to just kind of get an update on that, and I can provide a communication to council, you know, if that would suffice, and try and move that along quickly.
Then I will go ahead and just, instead of February, I will make a motion to have you come back to talk about the areas that are still under negotiation and the areas that will be closed and when they will be closed, and a map including when they will be closed and where they will be closed on November 7th. And if you need to change that, just reach out to my office and we're happy to move it.
We have a motion, do we have a second? Second from Councilmember Clendenin and Mr. Shelby. Discussion.
Yes, is that a written report or something that's a staff report?
I would like a written report, but also a staff report. I think the public
So it shows
wants to
up
hear
under
about
staff
that.
report.
Yes.
Then thank you.
Yes, and I looked, we only have one staff report that day.
We have a motion, we have a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, any opposed? All it's unanimous. Thank you very much. All right, that concludes the pulled items. We're gonna go to 19. Items, thinking years, to item 71. Let's go back to 1971.
We'll see what was going on in
Mayor, we got
1971.
Mayor Greco, young Mayor Greco. Okay, item number 71, we have the fire chief here, Councilmember Vieira. That was your motion? I'll be right back.
Yeah, I'll wait to hear from Chief Tripp on this. I pushed these back a few weeks just because of the budget so that we can make informed decisions and all that. And I know this includes K-Bar Range, Channelside, and downtown. Really, Chief, and I probably should have told you this before, obviously, the two big things I'm looking at is 24, which we've talked about, but especially how we're doing with property acquisition for fleet maintenance.
So Barbara Tripp, Fire Chief for Tampa Fire Rescue. I'm actually going to have Ms. Van Lowe to talk about different properties.
Thank you, ma'am.
As far as 24, we're actually moving rather along. We're in the design phase, so we've discussed it. Wish it could have happened yesterday, so I'm pushing the pedal as much as I can for that. And as far as K-Bar Ranch, and I know it has been discussion in the past as far as making access to that back road off of Morris Bridge, but I'm also monitoring the data as well, and also getting ready to put a transport unit in that area for Station 22. So that goes along with the Safer Grant as far as additional personnel to help assist with that.
Thank you, ma'am. And how are we doing, if I may ask, on that access road? Because I know we recently had the hearings on that. How are we doing on that?
You know what, let me reach out to Leo and see if they have anything on that.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Good afternoon, or is it evening? I don't know what it is. Michelle Van Loan, Real Estate. So hopefully we have good news that came in today at lunch. We currently have two properties that we have been actively pursuing. One of them is a property that's been alluded to several times as Chief Tripp has come up to you. We ran into some ownership issues. We received a call right at lunchtime during the break that they hope to have that resolved by the end of September. If they do, we've already had a draft contract. We will be ready to go right into negotiations and contract and hopefully get that resolved. We also have a property that we looked at about 12 to 18 months ago that was also a decent property, a good viable property, but it had some tenant lease issues. And it was a little bit too complicated for us. We didn't want to step in as the landlord in that and deal with some of those. Now the property owner has resolved all those issues and is now in a position to talk to us about potentially acquiring that property. So we have both a very viable property that could be something we're moving on in the next few weeks, and if not, we have a very viable property as a backup. That one just goes a little slower. The property owner is currently in Europe. That's also something that you read about in the papers. A lot of our local owners are not all local, so they own local property, but they may not be right in the immediate vicinity. So we are very hopeful that this will finally come to a close. One of the things I wanted to address is a lot of times when Chief Tripp has been up here updating you, this seems like every few months, there's a lot of comments and conversation by council members about, well, did we do this and did we do that? And what exactly have we been doing for the past 2 years as we try to go and find this property? So to give you an idea, we vetted 28 properties. Those were 28 properties that our staff vetted and then brought to Chief Tripp. We're doing site visits, we're looking at configurations. That 28 number does not include all the properties that just our staff looked at and eliminated because they're in a floodplain. We can't put all of that equipment, especially during emergencies, in a flood zone. So we had to eliminate several properties, even one we just found recently off of Maritime that was 8 acres, but it's in the flood zone, so we can't look at those. We get as creative as to look at properties that it may be listed and it's only 2.5 or 3 acres, and we're going to the adjacent property owner and cold calling to find out if they'd be willing to sell to us. We have been working with the school district to try and do a 3-way swap in order to get their property on Hillsborough and find a place to relocate their buses. Neither they nor we have been successful in trying to find a place to relocate those buses to. We have one property owner that says, hey, if you can find us a property out in the county, we'll sell you our property here in the city. And we even had one property owner who said, well, if you want to go ahead and file eminent domain, then we'd be happy to work with you on our property. So we get all sorts of feedback, comments, and sellers that we've been trying to deal with. We do a lot of cold calling. And just because, as we've talked about, these past 3 years, it's been a very, very tight market, especially when you're looking over 5 acres plus. But hopefully this will finally come to an end. We'll be able to start doing that design. You've got your new consultant that is going to be on board through contract admin to assist the chief on her footprint and a feasibility on all our properties moving forward. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Councilman Vera.
Thank you, Councilman Clendenin. And it's funny, and Ms. Van Noel, it's a pleasure to see you. We used to see you all the time, and not as much. It's always a pleasure to interact with you. You're wonderful. Councilman Clendenin had mentioned what I thought was a great idea, and in talking to a lot of firefighters, they thought it was a great idea to see if we had to do it within city limits. Do we have to have this within city limits?
It is, so we did look previously at properties that were outside of the city. Unfortunately, as you get a little bit too far east, your access from a logistic feasibility.
Yeah.
Since it came up at council a couple of weeks ago, and we also then officially felt that, you all felt that it might be something you'd look at, we did expand our search on the eastern corridor, basically about Hillsborough to Adamo, just east of the city line. And we are currently vetting 3 additional properties to bring to the chief. Again, we don't stop looking until we're under contract for an acquisition of a property.
Yeah, thank you for that very much.
Well, can I tag on that?
Yes, sir,
What-
please. Yeah.
Could you expand on the west side too, you know, the Del Mabry corridor or to the Del Mabry to the east?
Most of the properties that we look at out there for the chief's logistic being central, given access to stations and up north and the other fleet, for the fire operations, it is most effective if we focus on the east. We do look, but they've either been, to get the larger properties, they've either been too far west or way north of the university area.
So you've looked at it, just
Yes.
haven't found a property that was suitable. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. And then really quick, if I may, on, so what I'm gonna do is make a motion for these to come back to us. I'll look at the calendar at a given time, because I just want to make sure we always get a lot of questions on this, and it's good to have the most updated information. It'll probably just be a written report, whatever, and we can talk to you all offline on it. And then, and quick question for Chief Tripp, if I may. We mentioned here downtown, and I know there's a lot of discussions on expanding one, a lot of different things that are outside of my professional specialty, obviously. What at this time? Because obviously you have your own wish list, and you're obviously constrained by things. And I know I don't want to put words in your mouth. You want more action downtown to meet the needs of downtown. I don't want to put words in your mouth.
No, that is true.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
I'm in the process of now, once again, those additional personnel to add an additional rescue car. And one of the things that, been in this position these last 3 years that we have definitely fallen into a problem is that everything is outdated. So the way we dispatch our calls is using more resources than we need. So once we get this CAD system, that's going to eliminate a lot of that. But up until then, I am looking to add another unit to Station 1, and that unit's going to help with all of the medical calls that goes on in downtown. And I actually been looking at property right outside of downtown Tampa. It was one location that we used to have is actually a city building that's there now. Used to be our old dispatch system, and I'm looking to see what the size, see what we can put on there, and even if we have to put one of those portable fire stations there to be able to help with downtown Tampa. So it haven't stopped. I'm definitely looking.
I'm
I'm watching my numbers.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you.
That's okay.
Question for you, which is, what would you need from us, if anything, at this time? A request for a feasibility study on how to proceed with downtown. I know that's how we started on Station 25. It would go from 24 to 25, and now we're doing 24. What do you need from us? Would it be a feasibility study request to move this along and put pressure to see this happen?
So I think when we talk about a feasibility study, I think that is something Tampa Fire is going to need in the future. I'm not saying at this moment, only because I'm still trying to implement some of the recommendations that was recommended from the previous needs study. And with that, it shows that we need additional units, you know. And so, of course, we're growing, more people coming. And as far as downtown, the call volume, it's there, but they're actually running on the outskirts of downtown Tampa, you know. So what I would like to do is come back with you with some data, you know, maybe the first and second quarter, to let you know what the call volume has been downtown and kind of break it down a little bit for you with the medical versus fire-related calls, and just see what we can go from there. Because I'm monitoring the data. I get monthly reports. And just to let you all know as well, we, Tampa Fire meets with multiple departments once a month, sometimes every 3 weeks, to stay on target with all of the initiatives that we have going on. So that's where real estate come in. I have legal there, I have LAM there, you know, I have all these departments, because it's like, hey, we need this, we need this, and making sure that we're pushing the pedal along.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for that. And then lastly, I know, and we can take a look at that at motion time, but lastly, I know we had given an extension on the updated public safety master plan to March of, because I guess you're updating the one of 2022, the study. So maybe we can look at that around that time. But that's all. Thank you, ma'am.
And I agree with you. You know, I'm not saying we don't need one. Yes, we do. But I don't want to be a waste of money when they're going to tell us the same thing this previous study has done. And that's what, you know, this administration is doing now, trying to implement a lot of that information that was given.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Councilwoman Henderson.
Thank you. I really don't have a question. I just have a comment for Ms. Van Loan. You said that we do a lot of cold calling, and that kind of triggered me. So you're like all these other people, these investment folks that call our house asking to buy our property. The city is a part of that process. That's very interesting to me. Do you get a lot of people telling you no?
Michelle Van Loan, Real Estate. We don't quite call you at 7 o'clock or 9 o'clock at night. We usually start with letters that we will send to the property owner of record. If we know that they're actually operating the business, we may follow up in person at the business or call the business directly. But we are not looking up where they live and do it that way. But yes, we are like any investor. We're going after property the same way everybody else does. We don't have secret tips on how to go out and reach people. It's a numbers game, and you go out and reach out to as many properties that you can find that you hope might meet the criteria you're looking for.
Is there other things that we're considering that we need property for besides this?
Right now, this is our biggest priority that we are pursuing. There are a few things down the road where we know there's a lease that will come up in 2 to 3 years. But again, with property, if we find something that's a good deal, this just isn't the market right now with things being so tight. They keep talking about, you know, interest rates flattening out, or it may be becoming a buyer's market again. But I would say this has been the highest priority for our administration as far as new acquisitions. We also do look at the housing, but we tend to look at much smaller parcels for what we're looking at compared to this. And those are a little bit easier to find. You hear Ms. Henderson come in or Ms. Feeley come in and talk to you about what we're doing with those as we look at helping to finance new transitional housing and new multifamily housing for affordable housing initiatives.
Yeah, Ms. Henderson is gone. I understand though. Thank you.
All right, yes, ma'am.
And I just wanted, while you're up here, to say what you know, we've been talking about this offline some and with other things, and I just want to say what a great job you and your staff are doing, and that you're about to get your new GIS system that will make this no longer an individual physical job, and we should be able to do a lot more. And so just very excited for you and your team to get some upgraded equipment.
And I also just found out, I got an email while I was sitting there, my new GIS tech and our real estate tech is officially starting November 16th. So we're very excited about that also. So thank you.
Congratulations, congratulations. And Chief Tripp, along the lines of Councilman Vieira's questions about things you need, the only thing I didn't hear him talk about was personnel. Because those numbers have not changed, but the amount of people in the city of Tampa has changed. I know you are looking and waiting for those 17 people to see if we can get that grant. If we don't get the grant, what do you need from us in terms of personnel?
If we don't get, it's 18 that I requested. If
I'm
I don't-
sorry,
That's
18.
okay. No, if I don't get 18, I'll take half.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll take half to try to get a couple of those units in, and then next year I can ask for a couple more.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
All right, anybody else? Or does that conclude, does that satisfy the motion?
Yes, sir. Thank you, council. Thank you, chief. Thank you, Ms. Van.
All right.
Thank you very much. All right, next is item 73. We have Ms. Kelly Austin here, Director of HR and Talent Development, with a verbal report, and she has her team with her.
Set this up?
Yes, sir.
We, like you all, I get stopped on the street by employees. I get calls from employees, and they give anonymous feedback all the time. And one of the piece of feedback I got a couple times was they think that we need more leadership training. And so that's where this was not my idea. It came from employees who gave it to me anonymously, and so I'm just passing it on. Thank you for the work.
So, Kelly Austin, Director of Human Resources and Talent Development, and thank you, Councilman Carlson, for making the motion and giving us the opportunity to come in front of council today. The timing is actually very nice because after 28 years of faithfully serving the city, Kay Hunter is retiring. And, you know, Kay has been the face of training for a very long time. She, you know, is the one who imparts a culture of service to employees when they walk through the door on day one. And stay tuned, council, because we're going to be celebrating Kay next month. We are passing the torch off. She's helping us with the transition, and I would be proud to introduce to council Dr. Sabrina Lewis, who joins us. She is not from UT, she is from USF, where she spent 19 years working at the University of South Florida, as well as being a graduate of USF. Dr. Lewis's expertise is in adult learning, so it really dovetails nicely with what Councilman Carlson is bringing forward that he's hearing from feedback from employees. And before I go into what we like to do in the future under Dr. Lewis and her new tenure with the city as the training manager, just kind of want to quickly level set on where we're at today. Kay has worked diligently to bring back in-person orientation. You know, we had to shut that down during COVID, and then, you know, space became an issue. With Hannah opening up, we've brought back in-person orientation. So every 2 weeks, new hires get to come in person. We've made it where they can get their benefits day one. We've worked with TNI on some of the network issues that we had so that, you know, the employees have the ability to sign in, get their emails, get all their accesses while they have the training group with them. We've, you know, invited certain people to come into orientation on day one to make it more interactive with the new hires. The chief of staff comes every 2 weeks, either via Zoom or in person, and introduces himself as a representative of the city. And so it's really nice. And so we would put that invitation out. If council ever wants to go, we can share the orientation schedule. We can give you a Zoom link, or if you just want to pop in person at Hannah and say hello, you're always welcome. We always make time for that. So we're excited that that's in person again, because I think that's your nice first day at the city to be in person. Zoom was what we just did to get by during the pandemic. As council is aware, we still conduct the cultural inclusive awareness training. So this training team oversees the contractors that we use to accomplish that. We still have our leading diverse teams training that we had always conducted internally at the city. We have a leadership excellence series, which is really designed for supervisors and managers newly promoted. So it doesn't really scratch the itch of the, you know, further leadership development of your mid and senior level managers and administrators and so on. But it is a nice leadership class. It runs for 4 weeks, 4 hours each session, and we have different groups in the city come in and speak. So they learn about the purchasing process, they learn about employee relations, They learn about, all the different facets of the city and how their role in newly being promoted into management, how that interfaces with that. So that's something we have in-house that we will continue to do. We have a learning library that we purchased probably about 3 years ago. And we pull down items from that learning library and build specified training at the request of departments. If somebody's struggling with a particular aspect, whether it's leadership, resume writing, how to do an evaluation, conflict resolution, we provide individual one-on-one curriculum and training for that as well. So what do we want to do moving forward now with Dr. Lewis? So Kay's passing the torch off, and Sabrina is very excited about joining the city. When we interviewed her, it was so obvious every time I talked with her and the team talked with her. I said, we gotta hone in on this, because she's got that culture of service philosophy that we want to make sure we keep. But with the adult learning specialty being, her wheelhouse, I think we're going to be very successful. And what we hope to do as the new year approaches is Dr. Lewis would like to survey the employees to find out what would they like. If we could offer anything, what would that look like, And also, remind employees of tuition reimbursement for people that are looking to take a journey and perhaps grow and develop. We want people to stay with us, but certainly, if that's not their desire, they still have, tuition reimbursement available to them. Dr. Lewis and I have talked a little bit about an internal mentorship program to try to retain the leaders in the organization and help them grow and develop. And we're tentatively calling it Grow Our Own. Working title right now. We'll see if we stick with that. So that's something we'd like to explore as well. And then we're going to continue to look at what we have available to us in the learning library and also look outward. There are some external leadership classes, Cornell and things of that nature, but we're going to try to look a little closer to home and see if there's anything that would be a little bit more doable for a greater population than, one or two people getting sent to like a Cornell leadership series. So that, I'll take a breath and then, open up to you for any questions or feedback. We'd be happy to hear it.
Councilmember Henderson?
Thank you, Chair. I am so glad to hear this, because we do need a succession plan. We have a lot of people that probably will be retiring.
Oh, yeah.
In a lot of areas, and so, we have this situation in our Economic Development Division, and, we need people to step up, so I'm glad to hear that. The learning library, is it digital? And do the employees already know about it?
Yes, what we do today, though, is we build a curriculum based around what we have available in the library. So if we're having a coaching conversation with an employee, Kay or somebody on our team would pull those down for the employee and let them take those courses and classes and provide them with links to do it. So it's not just out there published, because it's very expansive and extensive. So right now it's not, but it is one of the goals we've kind of had when we bought it, was to put it out like on the iNet or something and let people take it at will. But if you want credit for it, we've got to run it through Oracle, which means we got to have some interaction with them.
Okay, is there anything for city council members, like, a course in parliamentary procedures, something like that we could use?
I'm on the 457 committee chair, and I would love a class like that as well. We do not have anything like that in our learning library.
Yeah, I would like to see that. I haven't had that course since, freshman year in college, so that would be nice. And
I will take it with you.
Thank you. I'll make a motion for all of us to take it. Maybe I can get 4 votes. Nope. I know Alan wants to say something funny. No, wait a minute. Let me finish. Tuition reimbursement. Just out of curiosity, how many of our employees take advantage of that?
Kay, do you know the number off the top of your head, or a ballpark?
And do we have the budget for it? I've never seen that as a budget line item.
I would say probably about 25% of the general employees, but a great percentage of fire and police take advantage of that. Now, we do promote it when we got orientation, and they have to finish their first 6 months probationary period.
Okay.
But
you see a lot of the fire take it because they need that paramedic certification.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so, there's different buckets for the different groups, and then like your wastewaters, there's certifications and licensures they have to get and things of that nature. So you see some people take it just because it's gonna help them with the existing job they have. But we have a lot of people, you know, in master's programs, and we've got a couple people in PhD programs that take advantage of the tuition reimbursement.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for all you've done for the city of Tampa, and welcome to the city of Tampa. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, ma'am. Anything else? Are you good?
No, same thing. Thank you. We'll congratulate you later. Sounds like a welcome. Look forward to working with you. A few things real fast. One of the comments I get is about culture, and it sounds like you all are prepared and you're on it. Let me say as a caveat, this whole area of discussion clearly in this charter is a power of the mayor, not of city council. And so I appreciate the mayor and chief of staff and others allowing us to have this conversation. And it's good for the public to see that we're trying to work together on this and that we're listening to our employees. And then also there's been a lot of, from COVID to other issues, hurricanes and politics over the last few years have been a lot of issues. It seems like there's a growing consensus to try to have peace for the next 2.5 years, and I hope that holds. And if that can hold, we can work together to ensure that the employees of the city have positive culture. The other thing is, like my colleague mentioned, folks want to move up. They want to see that there's room for advancement, and they also want to develop careers. They'd like to be here for a long time. And so, the more enthusiasm you all can create, that you know this area better than I, but if we give them training opportunities, leadership development opportunities, many times we turn in-house because we're one of the biggest cities and we have great staff already. We turn in-house and hire folks, but we want people to know that we have great training that will help them. And the programs you mentioned, Cornell, et cetera, I'm fully supportive of those. And so if you, I think people need signals like that on their resumes, and they need to know that they're good enough to go anywhere else if they have those on their resumes. And they need to know that we appreciate them so much that we invest in those ways in them. The other thing is, that we spend a lot of time talking about the unions, and I think we all talk to the unions a lot, but there's the people that work around the mayor that get lots of raises and everything, but the people in between, the mid-level managers, several of them have said that they feel kind of left out of the raises and the culture and everything else. And so to the extent that we can make sure that everyone feels like part of one team and everyone feels like they get advancement, that would be helpful to make sure that we don't miss anybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else?
Councilman Carlson, I would just add, I agree with what you're saying. When I came into HR, I noticed there wasn't really any stepping stones for the lower level employees. So that was one of my first challenges, and the administration's been very supportive over the 6 years that I've been here. Every budget season, except for this one, I didn't ask for any this year, but I've built in some stepping stones where people, if they wanted a career in HR, they could stay in HR and move around a little bit. But I think we've been a little bit remiss when you start going up the chain about that leadership development, that succession planning. I mean, Sabrina's from the private sector. I'm originally from the private sector. That's a big part of the private sector, is growing your own, moving them up, having a path. As long as we stick to civil service rules, we can still do mentoring and succession planning for classified employees that kind of fall into this group you're talking about. So I think we've done a good job of building stepping stones for the lower ranks to kind of move around, but I think we need to move up and focus on that middle group to get better bang for the buck.
Thank you very much. All right, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 items to go.
We are done.
If we could make sure we stay within that 5-minute per council member first round, and then let the presenter make the presentation before we start asking questions. So, item 74 is Mr. Tony Mulkey, a motion initiated by Councilmember Henderson. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon again, Council. Tony Mulkey, Parks and Recreation Director. Thank you for inviting me to talk about the Creative Loafing Brunch event at the Tampa River Center. Prepared a written memo, but I want to go into a little more detail for everyone for understanding of the structure, system, and where we're going to go. To begin with, the Creative Loafing Brunch event took place in 2024 and 2023. Full transparency, they had a similar event 2 previous years in 2020 and 2022. So it wasn't necessarily under the brunched event, but they had 2 others. These events were ticketed events that they utilized the River Center for, and had a variety of vendors there that provided samples to the public as part of their ticket. Now, the question is how these vendors were able to operate with our preferred vending program that is still in place right now, was that the event was licensed under an approved vendor. And then the other vendors that came in acted like a subcontractor essentially, and it's similar to how like a flower decorator or a wedding planner would operate, but food and beverage had to go through that approved vendor. We tried to structure it very similar to what the convention center does when they have people come in for a convention or something under Aramark. But we've listened. We've listened to the community. We've listened to and approach this with a spirit of opportunity and the availability for everyone to get in there, everyone to be able to have a chance at providing services at a city facility, a community facility. So moving forward, I know we have a workshop coming up very soon, in about 3 weeks, and look forward to discussing what those plans are to roll out a new system beginning in 2025. The current cycle of the RFP with the preferred vendors ends in April, but we know we have a lead time on events at the River Center because it does fill up quickly. I'd like to go over all aspects of that during that workshop and try and kind of break it down, but we do intend to open it up for anyone that qualifies to be a vendor at this space. We'll have the opportunity to do so. And I'm happy to answer any questions to try and address this.
Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Mr. Daniels, thank you for coming today. I know that you wrote the memo, and I'm glad that you all did, and it got into our system in time enough. This being classified as a charity event, is that anywhere on our website that lets the public know that they can use this space as a charity event and pick a subcontractor of their choosing to have an event at the River Center?
There's a small blurb in the FAQs, so
Yeah.
I don't think it's good enough.
Yeah, oh, okay, good, because it doesn't say that. What it gives the impression of is that if the caterer doesn't have a particular something, then they can subcontract that, like coffee or the cake or something like that. That's what it says. It doesn't give the impression that 14 viable city restaurants can come and use the facility. Also, who was the actual contractor that they worked up under? The licensed caterer?
The licensed caterer is CBK.
Okay, so CBK was responsible for all of these folks. The rule also says here, or at least the answer to the public, it says that the caterer can bring in on behalf of, what's being requested. So in other words, Creative Loafing wants this variety of food. It says that the licensed caterer with the city of Tampa can do that on their behalf. That's not how this event operated. It looked like they were there for themselves.
So yes, they were promoting themselves, definitely in a structure like this. It was kind of a showcase for those businesses. They were limited to 1 ounce samples, any substantive food, which they did have like a menu that they offered in drinks.
No, it was all you could
CBK.
eat. So limit to 1 ounce samples it literally says it on the cover, on the very title here. As you can see, advertised in Creative Loafing. It says Creative Loafing all you can eat brunch event returns to Tampa.
Yeah.
So don't use the 1 ounce, please. That wouldn't be right. Okay, and here's the other thing too. How, on our webpage, or even when the community comes to try to get the River Center, one of the things that's written in your memo, it says that situations that allow for outside food and beverage vendors are for charity events. Is there anybody else who's done this for charity, use the River Center?
We have.
Because that's not advertised, that's not clear.
Sure, and I think that was, again, it's not quite on the website, but it's part of that coordination process, and I think that.
No, it's not. Creative Loafing is the only one that gets this deal. That's what it seems like.
We've worked with the Gasparilla Festival of the Arts is one that we've worked with in the past with their events. We've had several other instances of similar I don't have all the details.
Yeah, but how would everybody else know? It seems like they would have to come to, it seems, or at least it gets that impression. No one else knows that, whether it's, any outside organization can say, oh, I want to give something to charity, and they could use the Julian B. Lane River Center and then bring in a subcontractor caterer, but that's not, the public is not privy to that kind of information.
So, and like I said, it was not as prominent as I would have preferred on the FAQs with that, because we have had even private events bring in someone if they had a specialized cuisine, like needing like kosher or some type of dietary cuisine, that was kind of the catch-all, that, hey, if these vendors don't offer something, talk to us and we can help bridge that relationship with a lead that has a sub.
Okay.
And I'm completely agreeing with you.
Okay, I just want to ask these questions so that we don't take up a lot of time with the nuances of this when we get to our public hearing about it at a workshop. The RFP has the subcontractor form. This is a subcontractor form. So are you saying that the caterers that we currently have turn this in with their RFP, these 14 caterers? CBK listed these 14 caterers as a part of their RFP or queue?
They did not.
Then how were they allowed to use it if they weren't on this subcontractor form?
So
That is turned in advance.
So as far as that purchasing agreement, I wasn't part of that process there, so I can't tell you what the submittal requirements were on that. But for the event, every one of those had to submit paperwork.
After the fact?
After that, yes.
So
Yep.
because this is done with the scoring process.
Correct.
The subcontractor form is done, and I'm saying this for the public, I think you know this, but this is done in advance for us to decide if we're going to use you as a contractor. See, there's just so many flaws in this situation, so I'm glad that we are, bringing some light to it. And there was one more. Okay, so a contractor, the memo said that there were 9, but there are 8 listed. So where did this other contract come from?
So I had included, we did an RFQ process for the small meeting room for the non-alcoholic events.
When did you do that?
We did that at the same time as the RFQ for the vendors in there. So the awards were at 2 separate times, and why I said 9 was because one of the vendors from the big room qualified under the small room guidelines. So it was kind of 10 awards, but it ended up being a delta of 9. So we had 2 separate processes. Those expired earlier because they were awarded earlier. They expired last month in August. We decided not to renew that because we knew moving forward, we're going to get rid of that RFP process. We're going to do a qualification process as needed.
Okay. And the last question is about the community. That's one of the big issues. The community doesn't get to use Julian B. Lane, but during the process of developing Julian B. Lane, the community was told, of course you'll be able to use this facility. But that doesn't appear to be true, and there's nothing on the website that indicates that the community has access to this. So is that something that you all have addressed?
I'll get some information before the workshop on that. We do have a lot of community groups that use it.
For free?
Yeah, we do.
Well, how would they know? Because I look for it.
Sure.
I name one for me, just out of example. Because
Well, I'm thinking more along like the school district or FDOT has used community input meetings and things like that, and they're more of those official functions. As far as like a neighborhood group or other, I would have to do some research.
Yeah, how would they get in? FDOT or any those folks? How do they do that? They make a phone call, a special phone call or something?
They have to have a city sponsor through a director of, and I can provide that at the next meeting and show you that we have a process that is vetted through a workflow and it has to be signed off at multiple levels.
This is a public space, so
Yes.
so how would the public know? It's a very important question.
Sure.
See how isolated this
Yep.
becomes? That's also, one of the challenges about this Julian B. Lane River Center that we paid a lot of money for. Well, we got the BP oil money to pay for it. So I think that's it. The light's yellow, but I'll leave it at that and look forward to some movement on this at our September workshop. Thank you.
So from my personal experience, when my wife and I were looking at a place to get married, I looked at the River Center, and it was $3,000 to rent the room, the big room, and then it was like $200 to have it for 30 minutes, if I remember. And then you get access to chairs. So I go, okay, if it rains or, we're in a covered spot, and we want to do something Tampa. And then it was renting the chairs, this and that. We just, to have the ceremony. We ended up just going out here in the courtyard. We couldn't rent it. We couldn't have chairs. I couldn't have music. It was, because it's a public space. We went in, and we had someone officiate. We took some pictures, and anybody can do that. So, I mean, anybody can go down there right now and get married and no permission, no insurance sign-off. But in response to the question of, is it open to the community? Yes, we were there for ceremonial purposes, getting married. But it's expensive to get into that building. I know that, if you have a sponsorship and whatnot, but, for community groups and kids that walk, going to Blake High School, and they want to walk down the street and get there. That's the thing. It's an expensive place. So, Councilmember Carlson.
You said you had somebody officiate your wedding. You had a VIP, which is why you had access to it.
So this is how much I love City Hall. I got married outside of City Hall, and I got a former mayor to officiate, which is Dick Greco, not other people. But I think I mentioned it to you, and you really like being here. And I'm like, yeah, I got married here and do this here, so now you know. Yes,
Two quick questions while you're here. Number one, when this facility first opened, as my colleague said, it would cost a lot of money, and even though part of it may have been BP, it still was a lot of money because it had been spent on something else. When it first opened, one of the concerns in the community that wasn't well publicized is that for-profits and nonprofits were worried about this building competing with them. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of the opposite. I think what my colleague talked about is really important too, and those are important issues to follow up on. But the flip side of it is that the others said, well, we don't want you to come in with a new building and undercut us in price. Mm-hmm. And one of the arguments is, well, this building is full all the time. It has events all the time. Well, I wonder what kind of impact it had on other facilities, because the government competing with the private sector. So can you just like real fast tell us what's the pricing strategy on it? Do you compare to other competitors?
We did do a benchmark survey of different private venues as well as other public venues as well. And the strategy going in was we didn't want to be the lowest and we didn't want to be the highest. So there was kind of that middle ground with discounts for nonprofits, which is built into our fee schedule of a 25% discount. The rates fluctuate depending if it's a weekend versus a weekday, depending if you're using the big hall versus a small meeting room. I thought I had my.
I would just stay. It sounds like you all did the right thing. I would just stay on top of it, because as the prices change, you might want to get a group of some of those venues to get. Well, you don't want to break any laws, so talk to the legal department, but gather the information to make sure we're not subsidizing. Some big corporations going and having events when they could go to some other place. The other thing is part of the justification of the cost was that it's a boathouse on the bottom, but I never see anybody there. Does anybody use that?
Yes, our programming there is actually full. We are completely subscribed for our offerings. Our Team Tampa teams actually produced 3 collegiate scholarship participants this year. So
it used to be that crew teams from other states, other universities would come down. Do they still do that, or
we do
use that facility?
We've had since we've opened, we've had a pretty long-term relationship with Princeton, who comes down during the season. At the end of the year, they've donated some of their boats to the community programs. So there's a lot of details I can provide on the boathouse as well when I come in.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, anybody else? So we will reserve the rest of the discussion for the workshop, because that'll be coming up. But yeah, in regards to the rowing folks, I mean, I see it always full. I used to row in high school, and we had, at Tampa Catholic, they have a boathouse there, and then we'd go to UT, that was the closest. But I mean, I've seen it used a lot by college kids and high school kids. Yeah. All right, we'll see you at the workshop. Thank you very much. Next up, we have a memo from Abbye Feeley, who is here, regarding the community benefits agreement for Rome Yard and the Yellow Jackets property. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Council. Abbye Feeley, Interim Administrator, Development and Economic Opportunity. Good afternoon. This motion was a motion made by Councilwoman Henderson, and I just would like to respond in person in relation to Rome Yard, the community benefits agreement, and the questions that she had raised in concern about opening up that agreement or looking at other modifications to the Yellow Jackets. I have been in conversation with Director Mulkey on this as well, and I know he's still in the chambers with us this afternoon. Just to add some perspective, the Yellow Jackets were relocated from their field in West Tampa prior to the RFP being developed for Rome Yard. So that the property was identified for Rome Yard, that relocation had already taken place. The RFP went out for Rome Yard. Rome Yard was then awarded. You may recall the first RFP had protests and it was republished and then re-awarded. And then the community benefits meetings that were associated with that development were conducted. During those meetings, I did go back. I was not party to that. I was not party to the relocate that happened kind of by other individuals within the city. And those meetings I did in preparation for reporting today touch back with representatives who were there at those community benefits agreement development meetings. Nothing directly related to the Yellow Jackets or any other improvements were combined within that community benefits agreement. So at this time, the Yellow Jackets are playing in the Tampa Heights area. I know you're aware of where that is. And it would not be kind of in the right direction to reopen that agreement or look at going back in that process as that is kind of standalone from that relocation and what happened prior to the land assemblage for publication under the RFP. So I think we had a discussion on that, and I'm here just to state the facts of the matter in relation to what took place at that time.
Councilmember Henderson, this was your motion, if you'd like to.
Thank you, Ms. Feeley. We, had to let the public know we meet in advance of council meetings just to get some understanding. And, when I made this motion, I really, was, of course, obviously wishful thinking that a developer would say, oh, yeah, we will make the Yellow Jackets whole. Sure, we can do that. That would be really nice of us since we have their land and they can't get it back. But that is wishful thinking, and they are not responsible, and I actually do understand that. And this is kind of like one of the things that I said earlier about, council, as a council, how we make decisions about spaces that we own, and really thinking holistically about the benefit, the long-term benefits, and, what we're taking away from someone as well. You have to always consider that. And it seems very clear. They're going to be very happy that I'm saying something like this because I never used the word Resolution 568. But, I've read it a couple of times, and it's clear that our city has made some horrible decisions regarding spaces within the confines of the city of Tampa, and there are just no spaces. These spaces that used to be predominantly black are no longer that way, or black communities, black spaces, and the Yellow Jackets is one of them. It came out of a horrible time in 1967 when a young man was killed on Central Avenue by the police, and so just when it was presented to this body, 120 acres, and you need the ballpark too. It's just ridiculous. It's just, a ballpark, I don't know how many acres that is. A couple of acres is probably 5, maybe, I don't know. But, for a development to have an RFP of 120 acres and not consider the historical nature of this one ground is unfortunate. But the community has to hear these hard conversations, hear these hard things just like I do, that there's nothing that we can do about it. And sometimes it's our job, you, Ms. Feeley, as well as me, is to say that to the public. And it's not that I don't understand, of course, Mr. Wright was before us this morning. You can see that he has, he is of age, one of our dear senior citizens in the community. And this has been a part of his life for a very long time, so he's still, fighting this battle. I drive by the new space, and it just, there are opportunities for us to improve it, but of course we need to take care of. We have so many issues to address with our large budget. It is constricted in that way, but I do appreciate the report. Maybe this could be an appeal to even our business community partners within the city of Tampa. If you listen to things like this, is that maybe there could be public-private partnerships that we could pursue to make the Yellow Jackets whole. The last thing that I'm going to say is this. The Yellow Jackets, just like Hillsborough County Public Schools, where you live is where you play ball. So now, where the Yellow Jackets is located in Tampa Heights, there's gentrification clearly that has taken place. A lot of people have moved into the community. And I said this to Ms. Feeley. The problem is, yes, these families have moved into these spaces within the city, but they don't want their kids to play for the Yellow Jackets. So that's how that's how this decision that was made up here even continues to impact the program, because they're begging to go play in North Tampa and South Tampa and at other ballparks that are more appealing for their children. So we can't even develop and grow the Yellow Jackets fairly because those folks don't want their kids playing across the street from the graveyard. So that's how much this decision has impacted us. And in the future, even with our Racial Reconciliation Committee, anytime there's an opportunity, anytime that there's space that becomes available in this city, I am going to take everything into consideration that was written in Resolution 568. And I will hope that there are other members of council that take that into consideration as well. Thank you.
So, in a broader conversation, and I've mentioned this before, you have West Tampa, you have Columbus Drive, it's known as Boliche Boulevard. You don't have to speak English because it's so many Spanish-owned businesses. You go to Ybor City, and the bedrock and foundation is the Jewish community historically, the Italian community, the Sicilians, the Spaniards, the Cubans. You go to Central Avenue, and it's Perry Harvey Park, and some buildings, the Longshoreman's building, you have the Jackson House that's barely standing, but the rest of it was demolished. So it seems like we preserve. Historic preservation is something that is so important to me, and one of the things that inspired me to even run for city council was looking at Tampa's past so we can build for the future. But having said that, so much was lost, and I've talked to leaders from the past, specifically about Central Avenue, because imagine a black Ybor City, business owners, residents, and that was all wiped out. Yes, we have Perry Harvey Park, but that was a community. If you look at the photos, I mean, I wish we could do like a 3D virtual walkthrough just to experience what it was like. There's a movie called Black Like Me, based on a book. And if you watch the movie, and I can pull it up on YouTube, there's a scene where the man is getting off a bus on Central Avenue, and it's the only film footage that I've ever seen of Central Avenue, and a handful of photos. But when Councilmember Henderson says, whenever there is the opportunity, so much has been erased, because I can take you to Ybor City. We can take that streetcar and go. I can take you down Columbus Drive. I can take you to my childhood home and the other house we lived in, and I can show you where I was born, but certain communities don't have that. They have photographs. So, and historical markers, because I guess the guilt of what was demolished in the past and what was lost, and then the Yellow Jackets fits right into this because it's so historically significant. And I've had people over the years ask me about this. We're going back to the 1960s. You said, what, in 1967, you mentioned Martin Chambers, who was shot and killed, and that triggered riots, and maybe that was the beginning of the downfall of Central Avenue. I don't know. But we have to make a better effort at preserving our history and restoring what was lost. I mean, there's so many examples, but again, it's certain communities are preserved. You have the Chinatowns and you have the Little Italies and all this stuff, but a lot of the black communities, maybe you have, Harlem in New York and whatnot. But here in Tampa, that Harlem of the South, it was completely wiped out. Again, I talked to leadership from the past, and I'll either hear they wanted to tear it down, or the interstate was coming through. It's always an excuse, but it's always affecting the same communities, if it's here in Tampa or the rest of the United States. So when you talk about in the future and you hope, you have my support.
Well, you know, what's interesting, there's a book by Sarah McNamara. She's a professor at Texas A&M University. She was here for a book event, book signing event. And in her book, I don't want to start crying up here, but literally the public comments from the community destroying the Black community. They came to city council to make sure that it happened and said, oh, don't let them come in our neighborhood. Word for word, every comment that the city council supported. So that's where this is coming from. The historical references are still there proving that it was done. Get the camera off of me. I'm just leaving it.
All right, anybody else? Yes, sir. Councilman Vieira.
We really appreciate our friend Councilman Henderson wearing her heart on her sleeve. It takes a lot of guts and a lot of heart to, bare your soul on something so personal. So just, I really appreciate that. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir. Councilman Carlson.
Yeah, and I echo the same thing. Thank you, Councilmember Henderson, for representing the community. And we're all out there in the community all the time, and what she's representing, the emotion, the feelings is what we hear, not just in this chamber, but every day out in the community. And I hope that we can live up to the standard of representing the community broadly and correcting some of the wrongs of the past. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Item number 76, Miss Abbye Feeley has a verbal update.
Just a very quick update. Abbye Feeley, good afternoon. On the code update, public kickoff meeting is just around the corner, Monday, September 16th at the Hannah Center. Just want to put the flyer up for a minute for those of you, Tampa Forward, Building Tomorrow Together. You will see this now. We've been able to get some of the space on the kiosks in downtown. So that was supposed to start, it'll start next Monday through the Monday of the meeting. Just to give you a little idea, we have finished creating an advisory team for the code update, and that's a 12-member team that is a diversified group from many of the different areas that engage with the land development code: engineering, architecture, tree and landscape, YIMBY, FAN. We have a good group that are going to serve also as kind of an intermediary there for the public. We've had a public survey up. We have close to 450 responses to that. Our software is amazing. We can see if there's duplicates coming from households and different things like that. So right now we have 443 that have come in. We have 60 participants currently signed up to participate at the Monday night. And I would, of course, like to invite council to be present that night if that is your desire. It is not a publicly noticed council meeting, so it would be more listening for council. And I don't know if Mr. Shelby wants to talk about that, but I have continued to tell you I will be here to let you know what's going on, where we are in the process, how's it going, and that I just wanted to give you that brief update today. It's at Hannah Avenue. Doors open at 6:30. We are going to have, yeah, we can. Oh, let me zoom out. Sorry about that. Doors open at 6:30. The program will be at 7. The consultants will be in. I mean, they'll be there to participate clearly and engage with the public so that we can continue to forge those relationships as we move forward in updating our land development code together.
All right. And you mentioned something that you'll always be here to update us. Let me say for the public record, you're always accessible. You always answer my questions. You always take my calls. You always do a wonderful job. So
thank you.
I think that needs to be publicly acknowledged.
Thank you.
You're a very busy person. There's a lot going on. So thank you very much.
You have how many jobs now?
Yeah, you do a lot. All right, so item number 77, we had Mr. Bide here earlier regarding the flooding, but I know this is about pipes and there's a PowerPoint presentation. Mr. Baird, if you want to take it from there.
I will. Good afternoon, Brad Baird, Deputy Administrator of Infrastructure. Today is the 5-year anniversary of the pipes approval. On September 5th, 2019, 4 people on this city council were part of that historic vote for a $2.88 billion program to rehabilitate and replace water and wastewater infrastructure. Thank you very much again for your support back then. With that introduction, I'll turn it over to Eric and Rory to go through some more details.
I can't believe it's already been 5 years.
Yeah. Oh, and bring up the presentation, please.
Yeah, it's here, it's gonna come up.
Okay.
Time flies.
Eric Weiss, Wastewater Department Director. I'll just jump right into it. The backbone of our pipes program in the wastewater department is our master plans. And that's what we first did. So we did a master plan for our one wastewater treatment plant, the Howard F. Curran Advanced Wastewater Treatment Plant down at Port Tampa Bay. We have 229 wastewater pumping stations throughout the city. Did another one for that, a master plan for that. And finally, we did one for the actual pipes in the ground throughout the city, about 1,500 miles of pipe. Adding that all together, $1.37 billion. Where are we at? This is an updated slide. So 5 years to the day, we've awarded 99 projects for $480 million. Since our last update 6 months ago, on there is 4 additional projects for a additional total of 20 million. That was really mostly one project. You may remember I came and did a Bayshore wastewater pumping station in the median of Bayshore at Stovall and Mason Street. So that's what we've done. If you remember too, 6 months ago we talked about, hey, these master plans were done before COVID, before the inflation. So our calculation 6 months ago is about $181 million of additional cost if we did the same exact master plans. I think we're still okay. What we've done is we had really sound master plans at the plant for new processes, but I think we should fix the stuff that's broken, as I always say first. These are all additional things, and I think that would be done 12 to 20 years in this master plan. So we have time to come back and maybe get grants or do something different. I want to quickly highlight just 2 projects that's going to be coming in the next 6 months. Big one, biogas use and digestive system improvements. What is that? So at our wastewater treatment plant, raw sludge is collected throughout the wastewater treatment process. In Tampa, we treat that sludge to a degree that lets it go to land application and environmentally improved ranches throughout the state. Well, we treat that sludge in these big tanks you see here called anaerobic digesters. In there, you put in the raw sludge, heat it up to 95 degrees for 15 days, and it breaks down all the protozoans, organic material, and all the bad stuff, I'll call it, which then allows it to be used for land application. Well, most of these tanks were built in the 1950s with the original wastewater treatment plant. And they're past their useful life. In addition, another theme you may remember me say, a lot of the control equipment for this stuff, panels, heat exchangers and things, are in basements below grade. So in the lens of sustainability and climate change, we're gonna rebuild those above grade. So this is now about a $112 million project. We are ready to go. It's planned to come to council hopefully next month for your approval. One more similar project to this, those anaerobic digesters I talked about, in that process we make methane, about 1.4 million, an equivalent to about 1.4 million gallons of diesel fuel. And what we've done since the 1970s with that methane, we put it in generators and made electricity to offset about 20% of the electrical bill at the plant. Well, about 10 years ago, those finally were broke and irreparable. So at that time we did the master plan, we did a bunch of analysis, what are the alternatives out there, and we picked, let's do new co-generators. Well, as inflation hit, those co-generators got 2 or 3 times the amount that was in the master plan. So we told our consultant, go back, look at the business cases for these things. Well, it changed everything. So if you look at that middle slide, that's called a flare. For the last 10 years, that's what we've been doing with our extra methane, just burning it off into the atmosphere. What we can do, and the selected alternative is you take that methane, clean it up. You can see that top picture through these membranes, and you could actually put it out into the natural gas pipeline. There's a big market now. If you use it for transportation, as you put it out there, you can see that last picture as an example. So you can get what's called a REN credit. So for every equivalent gallon that you would have produced of diesel, you get this REN credit, and you could sell that on the open market. And the good thing is, Google or other entities want to be carbon neutral, they buy those because they want to be carbon neutral. So there's a big market for it now. Here's where we're at. There's one more program out there to do these renewable natural gas products, and it's the IRS, believe it or not. They want to give you a tax credit towards your construction costs of these digesters, and for us, it could be $20 million. It's looking promising. There are new regulations that come out. In the wastewater department, we're used to EPA grants or FEMA grants, not used to IRS grants. So it looks promising, and the rules are currently being developed. So we've hired a tax consultant to help us out for this new program. So hopefully that'll work out. In the next 6 months, we could come to you guys with a proposal to make RNG, renewable natural gas. If no questions, I could turn it over to Rory.
I wanted to wait till the presentation finished. How many parts are in this whole presentation?
Just be a couple slides after this.
Do you mind if we hold questions until the next gentleman?
Sure.
Yeah, so we can get it all out of the way, and then we'll take questions. Come on up, sir, if it's just a couple of slides. So.
Yeah, Rory Jones, Water Department. Similar to the wastewater department, our pipes program was built off of 2 master plan efforts as well. Our David L. Tippin Water Treatment Facility master plan and distribution master plan. And I don't have any exciting numbers from last 6 months. We expect that to change in the next 6 months. You did recently approve a change order associated with our high service pump station, which the requisition hasn't hit yet, so it hasn't shown up. But we are bringing some additional work to you. GMPs in the raw water pump station, our ozone improvements, and other large pipeline projects. Originally we had the $1.5 billion. We have expended roughly $466 million of that. That was spread across 4 different programs. And really, what's taking the hit at this moment, now we've knocked out, from our distribution master plan, we prioritized the replacements based on a ton of different variables, pressure, actual main break data, flow, the location of it, even where the groundwater table is, age, material type, a bunch of different ways to prioritize. We've knocked off the top and highest priorities of all the pipeline. Not to say that we aren't gonna continue to have breaks, but we've gotten the worst ones with the highest consequences of failure out of the way. And we're really focused, the remaining budget is really where the consequences of failure and the biggest bang for the buck go. And that is really our treatment plant work. The work we are deferring is really our pipeline stuff. We are exploring different ways to make our dollars go further. That's with our construction crew. We are exploring pipe bursting and other ways to keep costs lower, but that's really where our costs are, where we're deferring projects. At the current moment, we are roughly 7 years behind in the overall program on the pipeline side. But we're hopeful that, these rates will still come into play, and we're continuing to get more and more competitive, and hope to see that swing back the other direction here in a little bit. Wanted to highlight a couple projects for you. Our high service pump station, this is a cutaway that shows that clear wells, underground storage tanks there that actually have grass over if you go out to the site. But this is a new modern facility that we are relocating 8 different pumps that date back to the 1920s into this modern-day facility that gives us a bunch of redundancy and some resiliency built into it. We have completed the building. We're wrapping up various punch list items of the building itself, including the plaque, which acknowledges your support. And when we officially push that button of cutting the ribbon on this, we'd love to have you guys out there. To wrap this project up, we are doing some additional rehab of underground tanks. What?
You aren't elected yet. Yeah.
You will be.
No. It's per the.
It says Orlando Goose.
And this is when
Yeah,
it was technically approved, and you will be on the next ones.
Yeah.
I assure you, your name will be there as well.
You gotta add it to my album.
Okay, Rory, I'll let you get it.
You will be there with the others that were approved. We have to give credit where credit was due, right?
Understood.
So to wrap this project up, we do have some additional underground rehabs of those storage tanks that we haven't been able to get in the dry. That's the $4.5 million change order that you approved. We didn't really know what sort of conditions those were in. When we walk away from this, we're going to have a button-up facility that we'll be able to maintain properly in the future. The next project I'm excited about. One of the big milestones that we recently hit was decommissioning our gaseous chlorine and commissioning on-site, well, we're utilizing hypochlorite, which is essentially bleach. And this facility that you're seeing here in front of us is where our rail cars used to pull in. We did decommission that, and this is where our hypochlorite generators will go. We will generate our own bleach on site, make us less reliant on manufacturers and shipping. And this has made our community significantly safer by decommissioning those gaseous chlorine rail car systems. So happy about that. It's making progress. Right now we're working on bulk systems, and over the next year we will be implementing these on-site hypochlorite generators. What's coming down the pipeline? We do have some master planning efforts. We want to revisit our distribution master plan. We want to eventually revisit our DLT master plan. Make sure that we have properly allocated our pipelines. You know, Midtown wasn't necessarily a thing then. We need to constantly refresh and see where our money is best spent. I'm hoping to find some opportunities that show that pipeline, some of that pipeline may not be necessary. We do have like I said, the ozone pipeline, or improvements are going to be coming your way. Raw water pump station is coming your way. We are actively in 6 independent review, and I'm hoping late this year, early next year, you'll see that amendment for design services for 6 and officially kick that one off. So with that, I guess I'll open the floor for
That
any
house
questions.
that you show here on the last slide that says questions is over on Central Avenue in Seminole Heights.
You know this, bud. Yeah.
One of a handful of the craftsman bungalows that have the Japanese architecture. They're very few in Tampa, but they're really cool for those little details, so.
Yes.
Councilmember Hurtak.
Thank you. I appreciate both of you. I do want to go back a bit to the sludge conversation, because I don't know if you've read, the New York Times just did a piece maybe last week about the future of sludge and how they're really looking at sludge as impacting the fields upon which it is, where it's put. And some of those plastic particles or things that we don't take out that are going into cows or whatever. So I'm just curious that as you go forward, are you looking for other things to do with that sludge if the EPA decides that putting it onto fields or other agricultural uses can't be done anymore?
Good question. What we've done won't go to waste. So what you could do, we would have to treat our sludge anyway. So instead of just taking it directly and disposing it in ranches for land disposal, we could make pellets of it. You burn them. Have you ever been in Home Depot and there's bags of these Milorganite and things like that? Believe it or not, that's from advanced wastewater treatment plants. But we have to do everything we're doing now. We would just have to go another step to treat it further. But we still have to do everything we're doing now.
Yeah. Oh, and I don't doubt that at
Yeah.
all, but I was just curious,
Yeah.
after having read that, was in the back of my mind of what comes next. So again, appreciate both of you, really excited about the things that you're doing to make our city better, and thanks to the 4 of you who were able to vote for this pipes program.
And I've told the mayor, I go, this is, you know, for the legacy, for the historic proportion, that this is the largest infrastructure investment in the city of Tampa history by far. So it's a huge deal, Councilmember Carl.
And the other thing we did was we carved toilet tap out of it.
Yeah.
So that was another good thing.
We what?
It was 3.2 billion, and then we took out 300 million, which took toilet tap out. Probably the public's wondering about that. Thank you both for your presentation, and thank you for working so closely with us and constituents. Rory, you showed the new processors, and you said the word term is like high volume or something like that. But can each of you explain, just 2 quick questions, what improvements are we making? I think in Rory's plant, the water's going faster, there's higher volume. But are we building bigger capacities like in the sludge ponds? Are we building, not just building the same thing in place, are we building higher capacity for the future, or what's the status of?
That's exactly it. We're building more capacity. Now, it's not necessarily because we're gonna have to pump out more. It's building more capacity for us to treat more. The way it's situated, we have the ability to we have redundancy built in. We have the ability to take pumps out and service pumps. So we do have a higher capacity, but the higher capacity is so we can take pumps out of service and properly maintain it. There's times of the year where we don't have the ability to take out equipment or assets out of service to properly maintain. We have to do it in the live with water flowing through it, or we don't necessarily maintain it as we should. So it is higher capacity, but it's to give us the ability to maintain it.
And the water flow goes faster. Water flow goes faster too, right?
It does, but we're still going to maintain our outward pressure of 70 PSI coming out of the plant.
Yeah. Believe it or not, the question is no. So our wastewater treatment plant is rated to treat, on average, 96 million gallons a day. I've been here 33 years, and it's been anywhere, we've seen 55 million to 60. And why is that? Several reasons. Water is a commodity. People are using less gallons per person per day, so it's dropping. And the other thing is, we're fixing the holes in our pipes. So we have all these gravity pipes, 1,200 miles of it through town. All this pipelining, as you put the new liner in the pipe, you help stop the groundwater getting into the pipe, which goes to the plant, which we have to treat. So believe it or not, over the last 33 years I've been here, flow to the plant's been the same. So we still have a ton of capacity left between our 60 million gallons a day we're seeing now and the 96. We are making improvements with new pumps and things like that. When we replace it, you know, we get more higher efficiency equipment.
Since other people were able to tell jokes, we're not going to turn any of them into tilapia plants, right?
What's that?
You remember in St. Pete, they took a wastewater plant and they put a tilapia incubator in there, and then they found out they shouldn't have. Anyway, we're not going to do that.
Let's not do that.
Joke, yeah. Not as good as the two of you.
I'm saying it, it's not a joke.
Yeah, Bill, you're not funny either, so don't worry about it.
Can I get a motion to laugh? All right, thank you very, all right, thank you very much. Next up is item 78, Abbye Feeley has, that is Central Avenue, it's across from Hillsborough.
Yeah, exactly. I've
Just
seen
out
that
there.
house, a lot about that house.
It's a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, it's something like, but it looks much bigger.
I live on Central.
Yes.
Thank you. I had sent a memo out saying I needed to be gone by a certain time in about 35, 40 minutes for a community meeting that I have. So if we get to that time, I have some motions that I have to do today, if I may.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hello, sir.
Eric Cotton, Devon Incarnation. As you all know, I'm usually very brief when I'm up here. On June 20th, council directed staff, we were at a workshop, council directed staff to come up with language even though council acknowledged the fact that the Live Local Act does not require, it's a strictly administrative process, there's no public input, so to speak, but council decided it would be important for the public to be aware of Live Local projects coming through. So in the back of your memo that was issued, there is a suggested notice letter.
All right, let's make it bigger, so.
Basically, it's stating that, has the application number, which will be an LND start, because that's what it's in Acela, the parcel address, the data filing, and basically saying there's an affordable housing project coming through under Live Local. This is notice that this event is taking place, but there is no public input per se. There's not going to be a public hearing. The public can participate in a sense by being aware of it, but there is no public hearing, there's no appeal to city council, strictly an administrative process. And if you notice, if you have a complaint, you can go reach out to your state legislator about the Live Local Act itself and the preemption that's being done to local governments. And along with that, council also wanted a sign. We didn't print up a sign because they're expensive just to print up. But if council is okay with this kind of language, this is what we're going to move forward with. We'll have the signs. They're going to be the same size as the rezoning signs, the yellow signs. The QR code will work just like it does on the rezoning, the variant signs. You'll scan them, will take you to the map, will then take you to Acela. Any questions on?
This motion was made by Councilmember Carlson. Do you want to kick it off, or Councilmember Hurtak?
Could you put that sign back?
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to say thank you for this. I especially love the click or the connection to your legislative representative, because that's true. I mean, that's where they can go. And so I think that's very creative, and I like that. Yeah, well, you did a good, yeah, great job, legal. But also, this is great. The only thing that concerns me is that it says Live Local, but this notice does not create or result in a right to participate in the administrative process, which does not require a public hearing. Maybe adding, scan me. I mean, I know you're supposed to scan for more information, but it kind of leaves the reader sort of questioning, well, what does that mean?
Yeah, now what?
Yeah,
So put like, for more information, scan the QR code, like the bottom.
Oh, you mean like over here then?
Yeah, and you would normally think that people would go to the scan, but I think maybe just adding that language, because it just stops so abruptly. Normally it gives City Hall's address and like what you can do.
Okay, so when they have the scan
Yeah,
thing
yeah.
down like
Actually, that's a great idea. Moving the scan me, that's perfect. So
it'll look much neater than that, too.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you.
Councilman Carlson.
Yeah.
Councilman Carlson.
What do y'all think about adding the word preemption to the title? State Live Local Act preemption. And/or put it in the sentence below. Just, I think that we've talked about preemption enough. A lot of the residents understand it, but it needs to be clear that we don't have any.
This development is due to state preemption.
I would say this notice does not create or result in a right to participate due to preemption.
Yeah. Yeah, something like
or,
that.
Or due to a state legislative preemption, something like that.
Yeah, because so blatantly saying you can't participate, too bad. At least, because they're going to yell at us.
Yeah, it's not
at
our
least,
decision that you can't.
Yeah, clarify due to state preemption by legislative state preemption.
Abbye Feeley, if I could just make one suggestion, Ms. Pointer just raised to me. All of our signs that we just redid collectively in partnership are yellow. And they do let you know that there is a public hearing. So maybe in this case, we shouldn't use yellow. Maybe we should use something else so that there isn't that same association with the variances and special uses and something else.
Yeah,
So.
What color's available? Are all of them currently yellow? The VRBs?
All our public hearings.
All of our public hearing land decisions
We can make them slime green. That
How
would
about
stand out.
neon green? There you
Yeah,
go.
And neon green.
I like slime.
Slime green.
It should
You
be
can
the
find that color.
That should be the official color.
Yeah. What? How about this?
Mr.
Whatever's cheapest.
Eric Cotton slime green.
I don't think the cost is associated with the
No.
color, but
Yeah.
we'll
Just
look at
putting this
that.
on.
But
yeah.
they'll get attention and people will be able to see them at night and notice them when they drive by and, you know, I mean, yeah, you gotta think about that stuff, cause you don't want them to get, you know, signs get lost and fall over and lime green and neon green and you see them, so.
Okay,
All right, thank you very much.
you're welcome.
Eric's lime cotton green.
Gee. Okay, we have, Mr. Justin Vaske here for, yes?
One second, though, I just wanted to, I'm not sure, the memo indicated that we have updated the Live Local memo that is on our website. We've also updated the website to now have projects that received approval on it. So those other changes that we owed you, a status on were provided in that memorandum, and I just wanted to make you aware of that.
All right, thank you very much. Item number 79, Mr. Vaske, yes, sir?
Justin Vaske, Legal Department, item number 79. On June 27th, 2024, City Council made the following motion, which was that staff be requested to prepare a resolution to set City Council's salary at $75,190 beginning on October 1, 2024 for fiscal year 2025 and include an annual increase based on the ATU negotiated increase. Further, that said salary only be set for the duration of the current election term. Now, I've provided City Council with a resolution that sets the annual salary of each member of the City of Tampa City Council to $75,190 effective October 1, 2024, and authorizes an annual increase in salary based on the same annual increase negotiated by the ATU beginning on October 1st, 2025. That is all. I'm here to answer
Mr.
any
Vaske, I have a
questions.
question regarding the
Sure.
ATU language there. I'm concerned that it would look like or appear or be a conflict of interest since we as a body vote to approve those contracts or, you know, vote on those contracts. And looking at that, isn't the standard cost of living adjustment no more than 3%?
Well, currently, the standard cost of living adjustment for city council members is based on the managerial class of employees with a cap of 3%.
Okay. Yeah, why can't we use that and why does it have to be tied to the ATU? Councilmember Hurtak.
The reason that I just recommended it go to the ATU is because our staff was able to get a giant cost of living adjustment in the last contract because we had such great inflation.
Mm-hmm.
So we provided for them to have this. And the issue is rather that it is so low because we stuck with that 3%. Whereas if we're tying it to ATU, and Mr. Vaske and Ms. Zellman brought the same concern to me, and I do believe that we can talk about it during the workshop. We have a workshop coming, but the reason I decided to tie it to this, we don't negotiate the ATU contract.
Yeah, we just
We,
vote.
we in fact, we're not allowed to negotiate.
Yeah.
And the reason I chose the ATU contract is because that is our everyday employee. That is, we don't want to take any more than our everyday employee gets, but because of the inflation we just had, that first raise was a 9% raise. That would have taken us multiple years. And that's 3 years, but not 3 years. That would take, because they're getting that same so that is why I did it, because I believe that whatever the general employee gets, we should be following them. And yes, I do agree, but I think by and large, we support our employees. We haven't always had the same agreement between police, fire, and ATU, but the last several councils have been very strong with that. And I believe that that's something that we should get the same rate that they get, nothing more, nothing less. And I would like to encourage going forward, being able to make sure that our other employees that are not under this receive that same consideration. And that's the reason I did it.
No, I understand. And another thing is, you know, we talk about this salary. We're at 54 right now. Our legislative aides, I don't know about all of them, but some of them float around $100,000 a year. 95, 96, 100. This is public record, so I'm not divulging information. The mayor's floating under 200, like 180 something. I don't know if I saw this correctly the other day, but the chief of staff is at $250,000. Maybe I read it wrong. I mean, people don't know that, and because it's not talked about, because the media, we don't go into all the salaries. So, just to put it into perspective, where we're at as a city council, who else had their mic on? Councilmember Carlson? No? Anybody else?
So we need to move the resolution?
Yeah. Yeah, it was your original
Because I have the
motion.
courage to bring up these hard conversations.
You got to turn the mic on.
Yes, I didn't want to. Thank you, Hertech. I know you was gonna get me on that. I'm trying, CBT, I got it. Okay. What number is it again?
79.
79, here it is.
Just move the resolution.
Yeah, I want to say it formally. I move file number CM 247880, resolution authorizing the annual salary of $75,190 for the members of the City of Tampa City Council effective October 1st, 2024, and authorizing a general fund salary increase effective on October 1st, 2025, rescinding resolution number 98-1477 and 2005-633, providing an effective date.
We have a second from Councilmember Clendenin, and discussion.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I want to explain my vote again on this. I had done a motion some time ago, maybe 2 or 3 months ago, to have a salary similar to this to take place after 2027. My position on this has always been very clear. I want to read, if I may, the 27th Amendment to the Constitution has a very interesting history. It was passed, the last amendment that was passed, but it was originally written by and supported by some of our founding fathers, including James Madison, and then it wasn't passed until, I think, 91, 92, but it says, no law varying the compensation for the services of the senators and representatives shall take effect until after an election of representatives shall have intervened. Therefore, what I've always said is that we should, and I want to be very clear on the timeline because I think there's some confusion here in terms of my position, is to support a pay raise if we're going to do it, vote, have an election, then get the benefit of it. Other than the one that I propose, which again, I think that talking about a higher salary is something that is very reasonable, if not necessary, very necessary, in fact. No other proposal has ever had that, has ever said that we're going to wait until after the election to get the benefits. So again, to be clear, you vote on it, you vote yes, you go forward, it passes. If it passes, you have an election, then you get the benefit of it. That's always been my position in that regard. But again, the conversation on having a higher Tampa City Council salary is one that I support. That's why I did that motion to have us have about a $75,000, $76,000 salary with inflation adjustments from 24 to 27, when that would take effect in 2027, because we do need a higher Tampa City Council salary. When people say this isn't about us, this is about next council, I take that literally. And everything. So again, I know I'm in the minority of this, and I respect everybody's opinions, but I wanted to explain my position.
Thank you very much. And the thing is,
This is the next council. Yeah, it is actually, because you all talked about this before when I was just sitting at home listening. You all said that for the next election and you didn't do it. So I didn't see anyone move the motion for it to be for the election in which I participated in. Did anyone do that?
Councilman Vieira.
And may I explain?
Yeah.
Again, my position is.
And I respect
you. No, because I think there's confusion here.
Okay.
You pass it.
Yeah.
You don't get the benefit of it until after an election. The ones that I voted against were to take place and take effect immediately, which is why I voted against it. I proposed one that would take effect after the election. So just
The
because.
one in 2023?
27.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's too far
So
away.
again, yep, and again, I respect that, but I just want to make sure that my position is patterned after what the 27th Amendment says for Congress. People disagree. That's cool, man. Nothing wrong with that. Thank you.
Councilman Clendenin. No, I'm good. All right, we have a motion, we have a second. Let's do a roll call vote.
Carlson? Hurtak?
Yes.
Clendenin?
Yes.
Henderson?
Yes.
Vieira?
No.
Miranda's absent. Maniscalco?
Yes.
Motion carried with Carlson and Vieira voting no and Miranda being absent at vote.
Mr. Shelby.
Yes, I'd just like to take the opportunity to acknowledge Senior Assistant City Attorney Justin Vaske for his work on this.
Thank you
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yes, appreciate you.
All right, we're gonna go to new business information reports. Mr. Councilmember Vieira.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and we're going to make it. So I have a couple of motions, if I may. First, I actually wanted to update everybody on something. The Racial Reconciliation Committee, this isn't part of a motion, But we are getting dates. We have the facilitator. My office, again, I really want to give public credit to my friend and my legislative aide, who I just care for so much, Brand Jordan Lazo, and the hard work that she's done. Mr. Shelby, who I also care for a lot, and the hard work that he's done, and many others in getting this done. We're looking at having our first meeting. We're talking to the board members prospectively in late September. So it has been very difficult. We're also getting subject matter experts and everything for different fields. And so any suggestions for improvement, et cetera, please let us know, because we want to make this as wonderful as possible. I've gone through the different things that we've gone to go to the community and talk about this. I think this is great. And Councilman Henderson, some of the issues you talked about before, you know, I see this as something that can help us, God willing, make progress on this. And so we've been glad to work on that. So first, if I may.
Councilman
I do have a recommendation.
Yes, ma'am, please.
And this is something that I do with every single person that I nominate and appoint to something, is that I do a monthly meeting with them. And so I recommend that this council participate fully in that process by talking with the person they nominated and appointed to the board, so that so they can't come back and say, oh, well, we did this and we're up here and we don't know what's going on. This is so important to the community, and we owe it to the community to be active participants by listening to our appointees and sharing thoughts and ideas with them, so that this becomes a cohesive, and so that we can, when they come forward with resolutions and motions, we are ready and able to move those forward.
Yep, I agree, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you.
Any official motion?
Oh, yes, I have a few. First off, on CIT, I motion for the administration to report to Tampa City Council and for Tampa City Council to report to the public on what we are doing to support passage of the CIT. I'm looking at either September 19th or 2026. I want to talk about organized efforts that are being done. CIT is so pivotal to the future of our city. It is so pivotal, and we are 2 months away from the election. And we really need to, all of us who support it. I know Councilman Miranda, who's not here, has indicated, I believe, that he doesn't support it. That's fine. But those of us who have expressed support, that we're out there talking, it's not just the city. Talk to our friends in Plant City, Temple Terrace, East County, Town and Country, et cetera, on this. So that's what I want us to have a discussion on, what we're doing to promote the CIT, because if we don't pass this, we are in a lot of hurt. I mean, in a lot of hurt.
Do we have a second?
I'm confused because you said 2026, and I'm confused.
Did I? I'm so sorry. It's 24. I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah, that it's coming up in 2024.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Or we have a second, Councilman Carlson. I will tell everybody this, and this is what I tell people. This is make or break. If the CIT doesn't pass, I feel bad for the next mayor and the next city council. Because we talk about bonding now. We talked about a millage increase last year. There's a lot of needs. This is critical. And it's a 15-year renewal of what is existing. It's not a new tax. It's not a new anything. It needs to be done. Councilmember Carlson.
I think it's important for us to have information presented. I would caution everybody about being too closely connected to this as an elected official. I can go back through the data with you, but at least three of the four campaigns that have been run in Hillsborough County lost in part because of their close connection with certain elected officials. And we want to make it about the community, not about elected officials. It can't be, some people say, oh, well, the mayor needs to stand up, or this person. That has worked against these in the past. And think about if you got 80% of the vote, there's still 20% of people that didn't vote for you. And so we need to provide information to support the community, but if we're too closely branded with it, it could turn a lot of people off. So I would just encourage us all to be careful.
Yeah.
Councilman
Yeah, I kind of agree with Councilman, just I'm putting my political hat on, experience in these things. I think the best contribution we all can make as individuals and people who are vested in the community is helping the organizations that are fighting for this to raise money to be able to communicate. So if you have the ability to reach out and help them raise money to be able to do it, I think as far as moving this initiative forward, I think that's probably the best tack to take. is fundraising for communication. So if you have those tools and those opportunities, because it is a little bit of a stigma attaching the personal politics and stuff to an issue that transcends politics. You know, we all know how important it is, and how horrible it will be for the city of Tampa and Hillsborough County if this does not pass. But I don't necessarily know if we want to be personally either weigh in on that or not.
Councilman Henderson.
Yeah, how much money is this again? Hundreds of millions of dollars? What's interesting to me is that it's been existing for almost 30 years. And so the part that bothers me about it is the fact that we didn't have a succession plan to talk about getting off of it. Like, it's going to be ending. What are we going to do about it? And so now that Hillsborough County Public Schools is asking for a millage increase to pay teachers, this is a struggle for me as a council member, knowing that our teachers are underpaid. We open the school year, there's 1,000 teachers that are needed, and every surrounding county is paying their teachers a lot higher. So it's really difficult to be in this position where, you know, I hear council members going, oh, we really need it or it's gonna break us. That makes me feel bad, but teachers also need to be paid. And that does not make me feel bad because they are underpaid. And that's all I'm going to say about it. I understand why we need the money. I really do. And I just, you know, hate that we are in this position to have to vote on, you know, two things that are asking the public to, you know, support us to keep us going.
Councilmember Hurtak.
I think you raise a fabulous point. Always support teachers. Personally, I will vote for both of these measures because I see what tax dollars do. I see clearly what my tax dollars do, and I'm always happy to support education as a former educator myself, and just because it's the right thing to do. But that is the thing, that's the difference that this education campaign for the renewal of the CIT needs to do is this is not changing. The only real thing on the ballot is the increase for teachers. The other one is just maintaining. And so I do hope that when this comes before us, that we hear some of the strategies they're doing, because I believe in both things tremendously, and I believe the public does too. And if the public just knows, well, you know, no CIT, no extra firefighters or police officers or all these things that we need for our community, it's a different story. So I'm really looking forward to hearing how the plan is coming forward for both.
I'm so glad you said that because I want both too.
Oh, yeah,
That's
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it is, we need.
But we're not saying it out loud, oh, I want it really, really bad. You know, I mean, you're saying that for CIT, but no one's saying that for the millage.
No, I believe in both strongly, and I have absolutely no problem with supporting our educators means supporting our future, as does supporting our transit and public safety needs that we get from this. Yeah, no, public safety, yeah.
Look at us.
And if I,
Yes, Councilmember Carlson.
Yeah, a couple of things. I think that being in around all these for the last few years, I think the reason why it didn't come up until now is because of all of our transportation.
Yeah.
If it had passed the first time, this probably would have been brought up a couple of years ago. But because they made a second go on it, it delayed it. But we still have a little bit of time, not very much. Hopefully it'll just pass. But the other thing is, I know you all know this, but the city cannot use taxpayer dollars to say vote yes. All they can do is educate. Right. Yeah. And I don't know what I've never been an elected official on one of these before. But Marty, we're not allowed to use our city emails or resources at all to say yes, but we privately in a public meeting can say vote yes, right?
No expenditure of public money for it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. All right, Councilman Vieira, you made a motion.
yes, sir. And one thing I was going to say too that Councilman Carlson had mentioned using us individually, I would also encourage, because we're all registered to a particular political party, for us to also work publicly with people who are registered to the other major political party, because people have got to hear from both sides, because this is not a Republican or Democrat issue. I'm doing that. And by the way, again, and Councilwoman Henderson, I support both for the record, and I'm glad to do everything I can to use my voice for.
On the record kind of stuff.
On the record, damn it.
So being logical about reaching across the aisles.
Yeah, true.
We have a motion, we have a second from Councilmember Hurtak, correct? Carlson, all in favor?
Aye.
Can we
September
do
19th?
September 19th?
September 19th.
Okay,
I think you were taking the lead on it.
it's all good, it's all good. A verbal report, like a stated, whatever, yeah.
Yeah. All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Yes, sir.
I got a couple more. I was requested by advocates with Pepin Academies who were here. I requested mobility department to work with former Tampa Police Department officer Lisa Bunn. Some of us remember her, wonderful woman. Pepin Academies in relevant jurisdictions on establishing a school zone in front of Pepin Academies, as well as painting and posting signs that say "Do not block intersection" along 40th Street, and that staff report back on these requests at December 19th. We have had a lot of requests from folks at Pepin, parents raising special needs kids, et cetera, and I want to get this done.
How do they not have a school zone
The traffic there is unreal.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Yes, sir?
And yeah, I'm sorry, I talk. The next, y'all may have heard that Trinity Cafe on Bush Boulevard is, in fact, it appears closing,
Yes.
which is awful. So there's a lot of concerns on that, and I wanted staff to report on what city staff is doing for a number of issues, but I'm going to just highlight just two of them, which is number one, in Suling, just for purposes of summary, for the well-being of clients, and then number two, for mobility and clients, and walking on Bush Boulevard to go to other sites for feeding. And I want that to be, oh Lord, I didn't put a date, that's funny. Sorry, council, on, let's say, January 9th.
We have a motion from Councilmember Vieira.
Actually, you know what? No, we should do that sooner, I'm sorry.
When did they close?
December 5th, I think.
Yes.
Are you asking just our staff, or are you also asking Feeding Tampa Bay to come and talk about what their strategies are?
I want to ask them before I motion for that.
Okay.
I probably will amend it.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
so right now,
Yeah,
just-
because
yeah.
I was thinking, I don't know what we
I
can
know.
do as much.
I want to plant the seed and then I'll reach out.
Do we have a second? Second from Councilmember Clendenin. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you,
Anything else?
council. Yeah, and then I ought to also mention the report that we had today from Tampa Fire Rescue on the Station 24 fleet maintenance real estate, K-Bar Ranch in downtown Tampa. I want to have an updated report on that in, and gosh, where did I write this down? I'm sorry. February 6th of 2025.
Wow. We have a motion and we have a second from Councilmember Hurtak. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
And I think that's it. I wrote down a bunch of stuff. Thank you, council,
Thank you very much. Councilmember Henderson. Do you have any new business, ma'am?
No.
Mr. Chairman, anything? No? Councilmember Clendenin?
Yes.
Go ahead, sir.
I motion to instruct staff to draft an ordinance that would require a fair market appraisal to be completed of any property proposed to be sold or transferred. That ordinance should also include that the appraisal be presented to City Council prior to the vote to sell or transfer of the property. And I would like that by November 21st. And some background, it's my understanding that in previous council, Lisa Montleon, who used to serve on this council, had this as a motion or its instruction, but it got lost in the, forgotten world of stuff. So they used to do this, and that's why I'm actually putting it forward as an ordinance, so that it's institutionalized, and stays forever.
We have a second, and for the record, Lisa Monteleone was the hardest working city council member I've ever seen in my life.
Is she related to the dentist?
I don't know. No, she's from up north. But, I mean, we have very hard-working city council members, but Monteleone was fantastic. So, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Anything else?
That's it.
Councilmember Hurtak.
Thank you. I talked about this at a prior meeting, but it was not talked about in the budget workshop on Tuesday because I didn't make a motion. So I moved to have staff prepare a graphic and present it at the September 17th final budget hearing that shows data on all positions that have been vacant for 6 months or greater, including TPD and TFR.
We have a motion from Councilmember Hurtak, second from Councilmember Vieira. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Anything else?
Yes, the motion that I talked about earlier to amend the financial transaction, that was an August 8th motion, and I want to amend it to say a list of financial transactions that will reduce the fund balance for FY '24.
We have a motion and a second from Councilmember Clendenin. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Yes, ma'am?
And then one more. These are just two clarifying motions that were made. I move to have the November 21st in-person report by Revenue and Finance include a look at all revenue sources and a graphic that shows what went up and went down and by how much in FY '24.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
This is still attached to that November 21st. This just clarifies the language a little bit more.
Yeah.
Okay, second.
We have a second from Councilmember Clendenin. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Anything else? Councilmember Carlson?
Yeah, on the September 26th workshop, we have a discussion about the Indian Rocks Beach regulations pertaining to short-term rentals, which is a huge issue in Tampa. Legal informed me that there's litigation regarding that.
Yep.
And so I'd like to move that item to the April 24th workshop.
We have a motion from Councilmember Carlson, second from Councilmember Clendenin. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Also, last week during new business, a motion was made during the budget hearing, I guess that was Tuesday. And a motion was made in new business about the art space. And I abstained to avoid the appearance of any potential conflict of interest and an abundance of caution. On further consultation with Marty, I don't have a conflict of interest. It's a nonprofit board. I don't have any business relationship with it, and I don't profit from it. But I would like to motion to receive and file the Form 8B, please.
We have a motion from Councilmember Clendenin, second from Councilmember Hurtak. All in favor? Aye. What? Anything else? Can I get a motion to receive and file?
Motion to receive
A
and
motion from Councilmember Henderson. Do we have a second? Second from Councilmember Carlson. All in favor? Aye. We are adjourned.
5:37. It just takes.
Came up, which they passed around as souvenirs, and this was kind of the moment at which what you might call civil